I didn't show you had one before. I didn't see you. You never had one before.
It's there.
Okay.
Okay, we'll commence the, we will resume from our recess from last evening to carry on with our budget hearings on Wednesday at January 17th at 7 o'clock. If you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
and thank you. Okay, quickly what we'll be discussing tonight and during tonight's hearings before we recess will be a discussion of the budget, including but not limited to the Department of Instruction, the middle school and the high school, followed by an opportunity for the public to be heard. So at this point, we will start with the Department of Instruction.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to present the Department of Instruction budget for 18-19. Of course, is the proposed budget. I placed the mission statement up just as the principals had done. For me, the mission statement really exemplifies the work of my office in collaboration with the cabinet, all the central office leadership, the administrators, and of course the teachers who are working really hard every day to further the organization and benefit our students. For those of you who were not with us when we first embarked on the theory of action and the district initiatives, I just placed this up so you can see all of the work that we began in district this year together. This work, again, is done collaboratively. It's part of our initiatives to improve academics, student belonging, and to increase student aspirations and getting students to think about what they want to do while they're with us and beyond their time with us. The budget priorities for the Department of Instruction really are to continue to provide services. There really isn't anything new in the budget, but I would like to continue to provide professional development that's job embedded, as you heard about through the elementary principals' presentations last evening. Curriculum initiatives, improving upon what we have for curriculum, getting all of the curriculum into our new template, and improving instructional practice of all teachers and instructional leadership of administration. Our hope is to also to continue to maintain and improve all opportunities for students that we currently have, to address the social emotional needs and mental health needs of our students. This plays a role in various aspects, which you'll see about as well very soon. And we'd like to continue to fund college readiness and career opportunities, enhance our school community partnerships, and to continue to address the unfunded state mandates. And that's really where I begin tonight. I really wanted both the board and the public to really understand that we have impacts to our budget beyond the $2.2 million that New Milford has put upon them in this current school year. The first of which is TEAM, which is the induction and mentoring program that the state put in place to ensure that new teachers begin their career with the support of a mentor so that they can start off on the right footing and really understand what the organization and what teaching is all about. This mandate became unfunded when during the legislative session the talent office's budget was cut. What wasn't realized until just a few months ago is that the mentor stipends that we have to pay to the mentors, $250 a year for 2 years as the mentees complete their 5 modules, stayed in the legislation. But what was cut was the reimbursement to districts that we used to receive. Additionally, this team process is tied to certification. So you have to complete the 5 modules and prove that you have, and that was done in a dashboard system. That dashboard system was temporarily stopped in a way because the papers that were written used to be routed to other teachers and other districts to score, and they would be returned to the mentees, and it would show on the dashboard whether they passed a module or not. When that was suspended, my office had to create an internal process to keep that going. So we have a Google Doc that contains all the information on every teacher and where they are in the completion of each module. In addition to that, we had to ensure that our papers could still be scored. So I had to create a process where our internal paper reviewers, so they're called, would be able to blind score the papers and then route that system through. And once they didn't pass a few times, send them to our in-house chief reviewer. And we're very fortunate to have that person. Many districts don't have that person to actually score once a person has not passed several times and be the deciding factor on whether or not the paper goes back. So that increase to our budget that's realized in 18-19 is impacting us right now. We have about 24 new teachers a year. When you actually do the math out, the increase in my budget, you'll see, is quite extensive. This year, we had to find a way to absorb it and try to keep it under control so that we didn't absorb even more costs on top of that. One of the savings that we're going to do for this year is we're not going to renew the team dashboard. The team dashboard is set aside. I had to set aside some money for it for next year because I was waiting to hear what the cost would be. It was confirmed that it will be approximately $150 per teacher, which should be about $3,000. You'll see I put $5,000 in there because my hope is not to maintain a reflective paper practice. It's actually to make it more in-class based, where the mentor is giving feedback on lessons live and having multiple feedback sessions to prove that a teacher has actually passed that module. So I can talk about that more later, but that's what that extra funding is for. It's just in case we're able to kind of do our own process. I wanted the money in there. And additionally, the dashboard cost, it is approximately $150. The state is still working it out with EastCon, who runs it. So that's kind of the breakdown of where we are. You'll see the rise in the budget at $16,000, but the total cost for us is $21,000. Then the state passed a law on the seal of biliteracy that could be attached to a high school diploma for any student who can prove proficiency in not only their native language, but if it's not English and their native language, or if your native language is English and you could prove proficiency in another language based on a certain exam, you can have this seal affixed to your high school diploma. I sent out Jessica Ward to several districts. She's the World Language Department head at the high school, to take a look at what's actually happening out there. She visited 2 districts, Southington and Bethel. Bethel is using the test that's down below, the AAPPL measure. It's called the Assessment of Performance Towards Proficiency in Languages. The cost is approximately $400, but that's for 1 year. So each year would cost us about $400. This is not, we're not mandated to do this. However, when neighboring districts are fixing this seal of biliteracy on a diploma, which will afford a student an opportunity to prove that they speak 2 languages, I think it really ties nicely to our mission. And for $400, both myself, the World Language Department Chair, and the high school administration feel that this is something that we should embrace. Adult education, we're still waiting to hear what cuts may be made both at the federal and state level to the grants that will help to support that program. The bilingual teacher, so far we have a bilingual teacher at Sarah Noble because our numbers they actually exceed 20. That teacher is she's going to stay at Sarah Noble because those numbers are not decreasing next year in terms of Spanish speakers. However, Schaghticoke is hitting the number 20 mark. We already have a bilingual teacher there. I take her away from Sarah Noble for 1 day to help meet the needs at Schaghticoke, but it's not enough. And by next year, we'd be out of compliance with the law if we did not hire a bilingual teacher. The unfortunate thing is that we receive bilingual funding from the state of Connecticut. And you can see in 15-16, when I wrote the grant, it was $4,062. We took a cut in funding to that bilingual grant, and it's now $1,907. It costs us about $4,000 to run our after-school homework club. So I had to figure out and work very closely with Anthony while we were waiting to determine whether or not we were even going to be receiving this funding, because this was on hold until the budget actually passed. When we realized these funds, it wasn't a big impact on our budget, but you'll see that I absorbed money in for that after-school homework club so that it can continue, because there's about 30 children that are benefiting from it right now, and I wouldn't want to see that go away. And the hope is that we will continue to receive some funding since our numbers are increasing now at Schaghticoke and Sierra Noble. Then we have number 5, the expulsion legislation. And we're still waiting on full clarity on that law, but right now, the definition says it has to be a full-day comprehensive experience where the learning is comparable to what the student would experience in a regular school environment. What that means to us currently is we have a computer-based instruction program, and with some students who are expelled, it's possible for us to put them in Odysseyware and continue the majority of the credits that they're earning in high school, and some of them are difficult, like specific programs like Project Lead the Way or PE or ceramics. That is very difficult to meet. However, we're doing the best we can with what we have. We're looking at the full day comprehensive experience as the full day for a student who would attend school in terms of hours, but if our interpretation of this legislation is incorrect, there may be down the line an increase in our budget that is not realized here for approximately, I believe, a 0.4 increase in a certified teacher. But we're trying to avoid that, so that's not here. Number 6, this really has hit us very hard this year. Students who are in foster care and their parents reside in New Milford, which is considered the nexus, we end up paying for transportation costs, and really that law helps children in foster placement stay in their home school so they can maintain their credits, the stability, and their friends. Our costs this year, these are non-special ed identified students, so there's no state reimbursement. These students may be 504, they may not be, are the number you see in bold there. And we also have to pay for the education of students who are enrolled in school, and they may be placed by DCF or another agency, such as a probation officer in a specialized school. And sometimes we're able to work with a probation officer, and sometimes they don't contact us to find out what our school offers and what we can do. And in any event, we end up paying the long-term cost of that. It could be $200 an hour for tutoring, upwards of $9,000. As you remember, we were chosen by the state to take part in this district literacy evaluation tool this year. Both Laura and I worked with staff across the district, K-3. We were identified because of a gap in our regular and special education reading scores. And CERC, which is the State Education Resource Center that you see in number 8, they were contracted by the state to come out and work with districts to develop a plan of action to address the issues surrounding increased achievement and closing that gap. So they came out and we did some planning with a large group of teachers, as we had mentioned, and we crafted a plan to not only develop data teams in district, but also to do an assessment of assessments. Where are we with literacy assessments? Because they had identified that we weren't giving enough assessments to identify all areas of reading, phonics being one of them. So I'll talk about that in a little bit. But at this point, DLET is not going to be funded beyond this year. And what that means is some of our professional learning money is going to be taken up with continuing data team implementation. Now, I didn't contract with CERC to do the work around data teams outside of DLET, which will help us in the long run because Revision is doing that work with our administrative team, and they're doing a trainer of trainers model. So that will be able to continue, but that is still an unfunded mandate. We still have a list of assessments that we're looking into and that we would like to purchase and do training on, but I'm very much aware that the teachers themselves are implementing the Columbia units of study. I'm looking at what they're interested in pursuing by committee. Phonics is really first on our list. We piloted some assessments this year. We'll be looking at some, not programs, but some implementation of phonics component that would marry nicely with Columbia. So we'll pilot something, but there's nothing in the budget for 18-19. CERC is the State Education Resource Center, and unfortunately, I don't know what the future holds for them. They're not accepting contracts with districts due to budget cuts. We contract with them, as you may recall, for positive behavior support training. If they are not to accept contracts with us for next year, I have some grant money that is tied to the work in some schools, so I'll be looking on how I could reallocate that. but I know we'll be able to keep it going somewhat. We have someone who is trained in it, may require some release time, but we'll have to work out an alternate plan. Teacher evaluation, we continue our work with revision around creating environments where administrators are in classrooms and talking to each other about the feedback that they're giving to teachers. However, that is actually mandated calibration, and so that revision professional learning is tied into the professional learning line in my budget. And then Roberta and I have been impacted by number 10, Student Data Privacy Act, which before you enter into any written contract with any vendor, you have to come to agreement over the terms of the contract about how student data is used. And Ms. Pratt can talk about that in more detail, but what it's meant is that every contract I enter into for every service that we provide, so even NWEA, the company that we use for testing, we had to call them, read their contract, and make sure that we came to agreement. And sometimes the contracts are very cut and dry and easy to understand, and we can come to agreement. Oftentimes, they may not be, and we have to go back and forth with them, and sometimes we may have to have the attorney view it just to be sure that everything is in place the way it should be. We have been told that there's another organization that will try to be working on a consortium of contracts to kind of ease this law's burden on local districts. We'll be waiting to see if our vendors are a part of that consortium. Number 11 is truancy. So this statute is very interesting because last year I attended with a few members of the staff a meeting at the state level called Everyday Counts, and it was really about the difference between truancy and absenteeism and chronic absenteeism, what it means for districts, how to capture it in your data entry system, how to make sure it's accurate, and also how to communicate to families along the way at 4 absences, at 9 absences, what that looks like, and crafting plans of action to address methods of intervention that would help support getting students to school regularly and on time. Interestingly enough, I was approached by the youth agency just last week saying that they had been part of a youth advisory council meeting, and they were told that this legislation is impacting them because they were now going to be taking on, so if you go down to the second bullet where it mentions Public Act 16147 and Act concerning the recommendation of the Juvenile Justice Policy and Oversight Committee, that is the committee that used to handle the family with service needs form that schools would fill out when there was an excessive amount of absences and they couldn't meet with the family and come to agreement about how to get the child to school. Those referrals used to go to juvenile court. Juvenile court is no longer accepting those referrals. So where this is headed is youth agency will be accepting these referrals, not only for students who are truant, but are also defiant of school rules. So I was concerned for the volume that youth agencies across Connecticut may have to take on. So when in meeting with the youth agency, we talked about how I would work with the administration to create internal systems so that there would be checkpoints along the way and interventions and proof of interventions and proof of parent contact and meetings and social work outreach before it even gets to the youth agency. And then I want to talk to them about what they can do for proactive strategies in our district to help support some of the needs that we know we have. We're working with our guidance departments around things like anxiety, for example, that may factor in, and mental health, that may factor into why students are not coming to school. So those are all the unfunded mandates that are affecting our budget both this year and in 18-19, and they're heavily integrated. So I'm explaining them in isolation, but just know that these have arms that far extend into other areas. In celebration of the work that we have done in the Department of Instruction, and by we, I mean collectively the work of, as I said earlier, the central office staff, the administration, the coaches, the interventionists, and all the teaching staff. Curriculum development implementation, we created a whole new process for writing curriculum, which involves training, which involves follow-through with teachers in classrooms, which raise the rigor and helps meet the standards of both the state of Connecticut for when we take tests that are aligned to the assessments, but more importantly, helping to set kids up on pathways for college and career, whatever they choose. Professional development, as I mentioned, both the teachers and administrators have an extensive amount of professional development, but it's job embedded and directly aligned to the work that they're doing. Social emotional learning and support, we had a consultant that is working full-time in the primary schools. We'd like to continue that work at Sarah Noble next year if possible. We saw a big impact on office referrals and really the ability for students to decompress and work well with others in different settings. And we did a lot of assessment development, specifically at the middle school and high school around both new curriculum and just around different instructional strategies to make sure that the instructional delivery was getting captured in the assessment. We did a lot of work around the Columbia units of study, which you heard from the principals about last night, and you'll continue to hear about the great work that's happening at the middle school. Numeracy, investigations, that's our math program, K-5. Connected Math is actually the same program under a different name for the middle school. We continue to coach into classrooms with teachers, work on the development of instructional lessons, working with co-teachers to make sure that the special ed department has the same level of knowledge as much as possible as the regular education staff and vice versa. And our data use and application is probably really where this all integrates so nicely. We started data teams, as I had mentioned, through that state-led process of DLAT, through the work of revision. We'll be kicking off our first data team professional learning very soon. So that first Thursday after school meeting in February is when it'll happen, and then I'll have a debrief session with the principals to see what further learning they'll need to keep it going. But in my initial meetings, I did sort of a road tour with Michael Klein, the data coach, and we expressed to teachers how data is used to drive your instructional practice. So when you're looking at the student scores and seeing how they did, what instructional strategy can you talk about together that you might want to try in the classroom to see if it'll work for a select group of students who really need it. And how exciting that work is and how it ties into the work on intervention and supports for students, but also helps them to develop and work with one another and think about some of the things that they've used in classrooms that they could share with their colleagues. Summer school is largely grant funded out of Title I, that 3 through 5 Summer Bridge program. The only items that come out of our budget for that summer program are transportation, which I share with the Department of Pupil Services, and also some general supplies at about $900. And the algebra readiness course is something new that Chris and I started this summer with the help of the math instructional coach and a teacher. We looked at students who were enrolled in Math 7 for potential entrance into algebra, and this is important because we didn't want students to be held in a track, or feel like they're held in a track, because they really weren't. And give them the opportunity to be exposed to the 2 units that they didn't receive in Math 7 to see if they can score 80% or better after being taught those units. Many did, and I'll show you the exciting, oh, there it is. It's 17 students enrolled and 11 went on to Algebra 1. Very exciting data. And the only cost of that to us is the teacher stipend. Unfortunately, Schaghticoke is not a Title I school, so we couldn't put that into the grant. We also did a lot of work with adult education. There were some new courses that were added there. ELL and bilingual support. We continue to do a great deal of work with the CALP standards. Those are specific standards around language acquisition. And the Lost Links testing, which went computerized this year for the first time. And there were some requirements that were put on Ms. Pratt's office in order to get Lost Links off the ground and integrated the way that it should be. We had several students that were tested. You'll actually see the slide very soon about how diverse our student languages are in district. And we also write out of my office and with some collective help the Title I, II, III, and this year Title IV, which is a federal grant that was offered to us. I tied that to PBIS. But that grant also, it was interesting, it had mentioned that you could tie it to talented and gifted. So I'll get to that on the slide when we talk about federal grants. And then we launched the first ever alumni survey. We had a 22% response rate as of 2 days ago. We continue to send out alerts to the students to see if they'll take the survey for us and give us the feedback that we're looking for. And then I also oversee Title IX from the student side. I work in collaboration with Human Resources, who handles it from the staff side. We've done a lot of professional development together for the staff around Title IX, and we continue to support the leadership as they have to do investigations. We were also able to develop an aspirant program for leaders. Both Mr. Shagru and myself created a comprehensive plan for teachers in district to grow them. And this was at no cost to the district, and it's really exciting because we're growing our own teachers who really aspire to be administrators. And we're teaching them what instructional leadership looks like, how to budget, really the basics of how to begin when you get your first position. The Wellness Committee did a lot of work on regulation. For those of you who sit on the Wellness Committee, I thank you. We did a lot around the food policy in district, and we're going to continue that work. We've broken up into several committees, subcommittees, and we have now reached the building level where those committees are being held, and there is no funding in the budget for that. We had 504 training and development that happened out of my office. Curriculum Council continued into its second year, and they're doing a lot of work around creating a vetting process. We had the team and new teacher induction, which is always very exciting. We have ongoing meetings over the course of the year where teachers meet with their mentees. The Professional Development Committee redid the teacher evaluation document, as you've seen. So you've seen a lot of this work because it's come through Committee on Learning. So the overall budget request is a 1.81% or $47,043 budget to budget. Really, the budget drivers are the same. We have social emotional learning, the consultant hopefully going to SNIS and working on transitions, the team unfunded mandate and other unfunded mandates, curriculum development, which I've left flat, professional development, ELL and bilingual, the addition of the bilingual teacher who must speak in English and in Spanish in order to be certified to teach the class. And it is, I know you wanted to hear a little bit about it, so I can tell you a little bit about what the teacher does at Sarah Noble. It's a combination of a push-in model into classrooms for the integration of English and a pull-out model with the integration of both Spanish and English. So she's consistently working with a large group of students, the 24 students, I believe, at Sarah Noble, who are benefiting from learning on that continuum for those CALP standards to help get them to proficiency in English. And then TAG and science enrichment, which have always been a part of my programming, my budget. So to review, the Summer Bridge program, and I've given you the line item. What's nice about the breakout of my budget, and I thank Anthony Giovone for this, that breakout is really nice because you can see that this is the generalized line, and here's what's in it, or what we used it for. So there is a line in there to support supplies. The transportation line you'll see is there. And from just that small amount, we were able to provide 4 teachers, 3 paraprofessionals, and an administrator. And there is some funding in there, you'll see, in case we need to provide another teacher. We actually didn't have as many teachers this past summer as we had, so there's a little bit of money in there for an additional stipend if we need it for a paraprofessional and a teacher. 96% of students increased 1 grade level overall in informational reading. That was one of the targets on the post-assessment that we've given. And of this group, 11 of those students progressed at least 2 grade levels. And in math, we saw similar results. And the attendance was phenomenal. It was at 80%. It was very consistent from last year. So that was really exciting. BDZ 10032, ELL and bilingual, remember that that's mandated. We're at Schaghticoke now. You'll see that bilingual teacher in Schaghticoke's budget. We did increase, now that should not say textbooks, I don't want to confuse you, it should say workbooks. The textbook line actually decreased. So it is the workbook line that increased, and it's just a slight number because there are students in, this is outside of Spanish now, the ELL is various languages, so there's workbooks that are needed in those languages, and there's an increase because we don't have them on hand. We are looking to bring in a translation. We have a translation service right now. However, the translation service is through an app, and you have to sign in. You put what language you need. The person pops up, and they can attend the meeting with you, and it's great if you need someone to share the legal information that you're sharing in a PPT or a 504, or when you're doing registration. What it's not convenient for is when you've contacted a parent and you really need to speak to them because they're on the line and you have no one who speaks in their native language and they don't speak English. And that's happening more and more across district. And so we should be doing this because it's good practice. And so it's in the budget to make sure that we could have more of an in-person translation. Ideally, we'd like a person physically present at PPTs and 504s because of the nature of the content that's being provided there. And there's instructional materials that are necessary, but there's not much of an increase overall in that section. Here's the breakout for you of the different languages in our district. If you look down the left-hand side, those are all of the languages that are represented. The 20 in green at SMS and the 25 at Sarah Noble are the Spanish-speaking students. And then you can see, though, at the bottom of HPS, for example, there are 29 students there of various languages, 17 Spanish. They don't qualify for bilingual yet, but there is support at each of these buildings in some way. Generally, it's in the form of a tutor. We have 2 EL teachers in district, one that's presently at the high school, and the other who is split between Hill and Plain, and I believe she was at Scotticoke, but she's split between another school. I can't remember at the moment. But anyway, she's split, and then we have some instructional tutors that support kids for the remainder of the schools that are there. Science enrichment and Project Lead the Way is BDZ 10033. So there, really it showcases the work of our one science enrichment teacher who's K-5. She uses the Project Lead the Way kits for science exploration, specifically the launch kits, which are for specific to kindergarten through grade 5. We own the kits for grades 1 through 5, and there's some of the work that she's been doing and how many students she's been servicing. When you look at the fact that she's split between 3 schools, it's pretty amazing on how much science enrichment students are actually provided. And her requests are merged with those of TAG. So when you look at those line items, it's not just for science enrichment, it also incorporates anything that's needed to run Talented and Gifted during the day, and also the enrichment that happens during the school day and after school. Those lines also include Project Lead the Way training, and I had to include a stipend for the science nights that are held at each building because it needed to be captured. It's happening, but I wanted to capture it adequately in that department, in that program. And this is the other section of that, it's Talented and Gifted. Now, Talented and Gifted is required by law only in terms of professional learning for teachers and identification of students. However, our Talented and Gifted teacher services 90 students in grades 3 through 8, and also provides services to non-identified students who are talented and also are gifted in other areas at 60 students per semester. So she's servicing quite a group of students. Mock trial, math Olympiad, that's all included in there. We did include COGAT testing for grade 3 so that we could identify students in 3rd grade. COGAT worked out exactly how we thought it would in terms of identification. We had the exact percentage that we had hoped for, that 1%, and the teacher has cross-referenced the list of students that had already been identified with students who were newly identified. She also does a lot of curriculum compacting, so there's a lot of work that's going on across district outside of what I've been able to capture here. The instructional testing line, that's BDZ 10044. That's really all of the testing and licensing for the district, with the exception of the high school. The high school testing is all found in the high school budget, so that's where you'll see PSAT, the AP, and the ACTFL standards test, which is the APPLE that I mentioned earlier for that biliteracy. Last night, you heard a lot of conversation around intervention and the need for a Bridges intervention program for mathematics K-5. What you'll hear tonight is the need for continued expansion of intervention at the middle school. So what we did this year is we implemented running records K through 8. And running records really measure a student's oral reading ability. So they're sitting one-on-one with a teacher, and the teacher's listening for corrections that involve things like meaning, syntax, and visual clues, and that provides them with a reading level. And from that reading level, you can identify students that are on grade level, who are approaching, they're slightly below, and those that are significantly below. I've had to work very closely with the middle school because the middle school had never given running records before, and they gave the first administration in September. And in September, we looked at how many students were reading above grade level, at grade level, and below. we waited another round. We began intervention for kids who were significantly below grade level. When we administered the assessments again, and we looked at it against MAP to gauge how close it was, it's very closely aligned, we recognized the need for intervention of more students. What that means is that the current state of intervention really, this is happening in all buildings, is that the staff that we have are working with a very large number of students. And when I look at what Chris Longo is going to be able to do in his building for students and utilizing the staff that he has, it's going to be difficult. He has 2 reading specialists that are going to have to pick up a lot of students, and it's going to have to be fluid of who stays and who's transitioning out and going into world language. So we're looking at developing that structure. We're also working with teachers on supporting kids in their classroom who may be on the cusp or slightly below grade level to help them get up to grade level and be able to read where they should be. And this is just kind of the work that we're doing. We're focusing on the intervention libraries. You heard about those last night. We need more texts for students who are not reading on grade level, especially at Sarah Noble and the middle school, where the age of the student requires them to have a text that doesn't show that they're, let's say, 3 or 4 grade levels behind. So the texts that we're purchasing actually look like they're on level. They don't look any different. And they will help the student be able to choose something of high interest and not have it be visible that they're at a different place than someone else in the classroom. That's really important to us collectively. Phonics assessments, that was identified as a need through DLET. Currently, we use the Foundations program for Tier 3 intervention. Those are our neediest students in reading, and that's also used as a special ed intervention. Our special ed teachers are saying that the benefit of the phonics component is pretty big. They like it. They like to see it in the regular ed setting as well. The regular ed teachers are open to that, but they're also open to looking at Columbia's version, which has not been released yet. We're really excited coming off of the fall reunion at Columbia University to hear that they're going to have a program that's integrated to the work that's already being done in the units of study. And that's really appealing to the teachers because the program they're using right now requires 45 minutes of additional instruction on top of the Columbia units, and it's just too much. So we'll be looking to pilot those before a decision's even made to purchase in several classrooms across the 2 buildings and potentially 3rd grade over the next year. The Bridges program for K-5 is directly connected to the investigations program we use in mathematics. The cost of that program is $1,500 per school, and the amount of students that we'll be able to reach at $1,500 is pretty terrific. So we had done over the course of the last 2 years a lot of looking into what was out there, piloting programs at various levels, and this is the one that we agreed was the most closely aligned and would benefit students who are going to intervention but are also going into the classroom setting to keep that continuity, build up their basic skill set so that they can tackle math in the classroom. And at the high school, what we're looking to do is move towards Khan Academy. So PSAT and SAT obviously are connected, but as a part of PSAT now, you can register after you've taken the exam in Khan Academy. Khan Academy is the old SAT practice course. So you can go in for free and log in and take all the SAT practice tests, but tailored to what you need after you've taken the assessment. So let's say, for instance, you score low on a section in PSAT in mathematics around Algebra 2. You go in, it links your score, if you allow it to, with your areas of strength and weakness, and then it'll push out to you some practice work that you can do and reassess in that area to get better. So I'm working with the high school to make a move towards that. We would like to see more of an integration of it in both the ELA and math classes over the course of time. But again, that may not happen immediately. It's something that we're working to see if it can happen. But that may mean that we take a different look on how we're doing intervention at the high school, and if there really would be a continued need for those courses, those SAT prep courses, as they are. Curriculum development and programming. So a couple of caveats. You heard Mr. Smith talk about we're not addressing in this budget vetting curriculum or vertical articulation. Right now, the vetting of curriculum, which is really the checking of curriculum, the thorough checking of alignment of standards, assessment, and instructional progression, All of those curriculum that are written, this year it was 23, those go through my office and only my office. And I go back and forth with the teacher who's written it. Now, there's good and bad in that. I do believe I should have a hand in it, but I also think it should be done by committee. The Curriculum Council is positioned, they've been looking at all different types of vetting material. The issue is we won't be able to launch it because we don't have the ability to form committees in order to create vetting in district. I'll get to that in a minute. Part of the issue is the vertical articulation. So we don't have subject-specific coordinators or even a director who leads the work around, like, that's specific to standards in science or has specific knowledge to the standards in social studies. Teachers in district have had training, and we do have some experts, but they're teaching full-time. And in order for them to leave their classroom to vet curriculum and work with the high school, it's very difficult. We just don't have that connection yet. We will. It's happening through my office, but it's not, it could be better. Could be better. The curriculum mapping tool would help with that, but it would also give us a live document where we'd be able to work with teachers to they can make changes in the document as they go, requested changes, so that we wouldn't have to wait 5 years for a curriculum to be revised. That's critical, because if you're seeing that something is not working, why would you want to replicate it for 4 years before you can make a change? And I'm not saying that that has to be the current state. I've looked at curriculum, we've had conversations, I've invited them back, but the revision really could be live and approved live and then be implemented. And that's really what we're looking to do, and have it go through a process, but we can't do that yet because that's not in our budget. It also does not, I've heard you say or ask about Project Lead the Way in grade 6. This budget does not address that. It also does not include, you've talked about adding programming, which would be a big undertaking. That would take planning. It wouldn't just show up in the budget. World language, specifically at the primary level. So we haven't done that work around the programming component, and I didn't include it in the budget, but I wanted you to know why. We do hear you, and we understand that that's something that you would be looking to do in the future perhaps, but it just isn't the time right now. And what it does do, here's the bright side, is that it does continue to fund the creation of curriculum aligned to new standards. And you heard a lot last night about the NEASC recommendations, but I wanted you to see the specific recommendations that came out from the visit, and I want to talk a little bit about how we're addressing it. So we did form a curriculum council. That was one of the recommendations. This is the second year of that curriculum council. That curriculum council was started before I got here by Mr. Smith and Jeannie Sloan. That took off. They had a few meetings, and since then we've been able to do so much work together. And really that is to the credit of the teachers, because there is never a time where I look around that room at curriculum council specifically and it's almost not standing room only. There are so many teachers there willing to do the work. We have to incorporate higher order thinking skills in the school's 21st century learning expectations in all curricula. We've just begun that work because we've changed the template and we've been working towards it, so that'll continue. That's what the budget does fund. It includes current research-based practices and resources for all of our curriculum documents. That's ongoing work as we write curriculum. We're ensuring that all of our documents have instructional strategies and assessments that include the school-wide rubrics of the high school that were created prior to the NEASC visit and integrated already into courses, and the course-specific rubrics that are created during curriculum writing. We're ensuring that all of our curricula emphasize the depth and understanding and the application of knowledge that they should have in each topic, and we're evaluating and revising our outdated curriculum using the NEASC-aligned curriculum evaluation rubric. We're looking at that as one means to do our vetting. I don't know if the committee thinks that that is what we will use, but we, at least when we were able to do our self-study update, the high school and myself, and Ms. Pratt was included in that also, when we went through to see where we are, we have completed many of these, and many of these are in process just because of the sheer magnitude of the work. But that's what's funded in that curriculum line, with no increase. The professional development, BDZ 20643, in that line, it includes curriculum training, which I know you know how important that is. If we want a viable curriculum and we want a guaranteed expression of what we're looking for in each of the areas of the curriculum, we need to train. Professional development for administrators, that's a continued work with revision, looking at 3 classroom visits next year, just like this year, with more independent work on reflection, and also support beyond just the time that they're here. So utilizing that platform that we have a little differently. Team is in there. The teachers' college training is there for teachers who want to go out and better understand a unit of study. Co-teaching, ongoing training, PLCs, and Thursday after-school meetings, that's all in that professional development line. Our overall professional development needs for district teachers, presenters, sending them out to conferences. We have an alignment with our 5-year math and literacy district plans, and then our purchase services are there. So our Odyssey Wear for the behavior intervention program for Schaghticoke in the high school. The computer-based instruction program for expulsion is tied there too. And then we have our additional seat for the magnet school, which was a budget correction, but you'll see it's actually a reduction because we have 20 students anticipated to go to Nottawag. And I'm gonna hope that as we move into the world of social emotional learning and transitions, that when I send Mr. Shagru down to the middle school with his department heads to talk about all the wonderful programming that our new Milford High School has to offer, that kids will want to stay. So maybe we won't have as many seats taken in outside schools over time. That's really our hope. So regarding social emotional learning, you may recall that there was another public act that passed last year, which was the sexual assault and abuse curriculum. And I met with the health teachers. For those of you who are on Committee on Learning, you were able to see the K through 3 curriculum. It directly aligns and supports all of the performance indicators for that new law. And we have some more work to do. So 3 through 5 are up for curriculum writing this summer. That should say K2 up above. CERC worked on PBIS with us, that positive behavior support in each building K8. And we're aligning all of our guidance curriculum with the social emotional learning frameworks. We're measuring school connectedness, which is one of our goals. And we did the alumni survey as a measure of that, but we also do a panorama survey that's sent out to all of our stakeholders, all of our staff members, parents, and students from the middle school and the high school during the school year. The transition work, it was highlighted in the budget yesterday, K5, because I've asked them to put a little bit of funding in there. I'm looking to expand with the 2 primary school administrators, kindergarten orientation. So Mr. Smith had spoke about how we were moving kindergarten registration up to February. I was very passionate about doing that because we really want to see if we can capture the numbers a little bit more accurately about where we are. But also, it gives us more time to capture our preschoolers and give them a little bit of a kindergarten experience before they come to us. So what we're looking to do is work with the bus company in the area preschools to bring in students for classroom visits so that they can sit through maybe a PE class or a music class and rotate through and get a feel and watch other kids as they go through transitions and how they act and how they work so that they feel more comfortable, and to give them a bus ride so that they can experience riding the bus for the first time with or without their parents. So those are just some things that we're looking to do. And as I spoke about earlier, we're looking at bringing the high school down to Schaghticoke to just share in a little bit more of what the high school has to offer. Social emotional learning, as you know, is also impacted by homelessness. I just wanted to give you an update of where we are. I'm the homeless liaison for the state. We've done a lot of work communicating how many students we've had from displacement due to storms, and we only have 1 student. At one point we had 3, but out of the students that we have currently, as of January 5th, we have 13 students who are identified as homeless. That number has stayed the same. Students have come and gone, but we're maintaining at 13. And then the last section, adult education, we actually took it out of the general budget and placed it in its own, I should say out of the Department of Instruction, and placed it under its own category, its own heading, so you can see the breakout of adult education. But basically, that includes the adult ed facilitator position. There's an adult ed evaluator, but he's captured in the grant because evaluations have to be done. She's offering GED and basic adult ed, and there's the number of students that she's projecting for next year. She's projecting about 5 students there, about 45 to 50 in her ESL program. In her high school diploma program, anywhere between 25 and 30 students, 12 to 15 for citizenship, who go on to take the test to become U.S. citizens, and then enrichment opportunities for everyone. Here's some of the highlights of the work of adult education. the facilitator has really done a nice job in going out into the community and bringing in members of the community to work with adult ed students, and she's even offered to have American Job Center work with our high school students. So they're available to anyone at the high school one time a month, and it's announced, and students could go down, and it allows them to have the opportunity to think about future jobs that they can take on. And for those that are looking for employment, it ties them to available employment opportunities if they're of age. And then here's just some of the other things that she does in adult ed, some culinary, some online instruction, CPR, CNA. She continues to use virtual high school to supplement offerings that she doesn't have in adult ed at night school. And she is expanding ESL to different locations in town so that many members of the community have access and childcare when they're off-site and they're not able to come to the ones that she holds at night here. She's looking to implement some family literacy components into her work next year. I do oversee adult education, so I would like to tie her work into the work that we do during the school day with our students. So we'll be looking to see if there's some things that she can offer that are low cost, no cost to families, but will extend the learning that our students are experiencing during the day. And that's all. That's the DOI. Any questions? You're welcome.
Joe?
As I said before, apologize if I start coughing, I stop asking questions.
Okay.
Danbury Magnet School in Nottawa. How many students do we have at Danbury Magnet?
You want to know current for
Right now.
17, 18? Anthony, do you have the exact numbers for 17, 18? I don't want to misquote.
Right now, Danbury, we have 17, it looks like. And the other, we have only 16 attending.
Do we put forth an effort to encourage students that might be interested? Is it coming upon the students and their families to come to us, say, we're interested in sending our child to Danbury or Nottawa?
So at the middle school, when the offerings are actually becoming available, the Magnet School comes in and does a presentation, and I believe Nottawa does as well. And they come in and they share the offerings of what they have, and then that information is provided and the student and their family can make a choice. What we're trying to do is replicate that with our own high school so that they can see all of the choices that they have and really make an informed decision with their families.
And I'm not certain I understood with regard to Nottawa, that is the high school looking to put in classes or programs that would be similar to there so that we capture some students? Or is, because it's such a unique area?
Yes, yes.
I don't know how we could incorporate that.
We might not be able to, but I do think that sometimes, well, I think that always, it's best to know what all of your options are. And I know that we couldn't meet those needs specifically. If you really wanted to go into agriculture, that's not something we could offer here or that we do offer here. So yes, those students would continue to fill those seats. But in places like the Magnet School, I believe that students are leaving because they're not certain that we offer course pathways here that are similar to what is offered at the Magnet School.
On the truancy issue, and I know we have it in our manuals and books, but can you generally remind me what the number of excused absences versus unexcused, and when it triggers or flags something such that it involves further intervention?
So when you're above 10 excused or unexcused absences over the course of the year, we send a letter out. But before you get to 10, we send one at 4 to remind you that you've had 4 unexcused absences or 4 excused absences, you have absences. And if that replicates over the course of time, that you're going to be losing instructional time, it may have your child fall behind. It lists all the reasons of why it's important to come to school. Then we send it again at 9, because at 10, technically, you're truant. You're chronically absent above 10, or for more than 2 absences a month.
In those letters, who are we referring them to have a discussion?
So it begins with the social worker doing outreach. So the letter comes from both the social worker and the building principal. The building principal works with the social worker to hear out any issues that the family may be having, and then the social worker will do what he or she can to help the family in any way that they can, and help them to understand the importance or find out what they can do to get the student to be able to come to school on time, if it's even possible. They communicate that to the building administrator, and oftentimes a plan is put in place if they have something tangible that the parent has expressed that they could work with.
Currently, are we seeing the numbers of students that there has to be intervention remaining static, increasing, decreasing?
I would say the number of students is over 10, absences over 10 has increased. Have I gotten to the point of figuring out how many of those over 10 have become chronic absenteeism? Not yet. Part of it is the trail. And so Mrs. Pratt and myself, we're actually going to be holding a secretarial training on coding, because what the secretaries need to know and be able to pay attention very closely to is if you don't hit that 4-hour mark, you're not in school for 4 hours. If you come in late and you don't hit the 4 hours of instructional time, it doesn't count as a day. And so I have to make sure that they're capturing that. On top of if you're absent for a full school day, or if you're dismissed early and you haven't gotten in your 4 hours. So we have to make sure that they're capturing that correctly. Some of what we see is being captured adequately, and some of it we're not sure about. So we want to have a discussion. We're also looking to minimize the number of codes that the secretaries have access to, but we want them to be a part of the discussion because they're using similar codes, but they might be using them in different ways. So we want to make sure that we're streamlining the system so that the data that we're getting when we say this is the group that's chronically absent that we need to address, that we're certain that we're getting all of the students that we should be. I can tell you that when I look at the number of students that are beyond, I would say at this point, between 4 and 10 absences, it is pretty significant in each building. And I do think youth agency and their support, there'll be a nice community tie to the work that we're going to be doing in district to help get the message out about why coming to school and being on time are so important.
Andy, and then Bill.
Kind of a follow-up to, I've heard you talk about this several times. I mean, like, can you tell us what the scope is of this? I mean, are we talking 2% of our kids? Are we talking 10%? Are we talking 25%? I mean, can you give us an idea of how big the problem is? I mean,
From
I
what
know
I
it's
see
putting
in
you
the
on
letters,
spot.
and the number of letters that I see coming through my office right now that have been sent out to parents, I would say it has to be at least 15 to 20%.
Okay.
Of the schools? The total?
Of the
Total in the district.
Let me, can I just interject one real quick? Oh, thank you, sir.
No problem.
So I go on a family vacation for 20 days.
Yes,
Where's that fall?
that counts. That counts
Okay.
against you.
Well, my point is, there's a lot of variables.
There are,
I know.
there are.
So I concur with you in the coding. Because, would you really consider that a problem student? But anyway, Bill.
Well, that's the same thing.
So that's what I mean.
Oh.
You just,
Yeah, well.
Yeah.
There you
it's
go.
similar.
we have to
Right.
sort through.
Now, do you
Because
count,
it looks large, the amount of letters looks large, so it looks like it's an issue, but it may not be. And that's why we want to make sure the coding is correct and accurate, and we want to make sure that we're going through, and if it is a lot of family vacations, that we're able to get the message out about taking family vacations whenever possible during times that the school has vacation. There's also issues where, or incidents, I should say, where students are enrolling in another school and they've unenrolled with us, but we haven't exited them, right? So then those absences are counting against the student. We have to go back, Mrs. Pratt and myself, and say, whoa, wait a minute. This student is showing that they're exited, so we have to go back and correct it. So there's a lot of that oversight. So that's why it seems like a large number. I don't believe that it's that big of an issue or an impact, but the letters seem that way because the amount seems so significant.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Tim,
Just-
is yours a follow-up?
No, mine was a question.
Oh, do you have a follow-up to your question?
I absolutely do.
Okay.
Going back to the
excused and unexcused, okay? I have a problem when you send a letter for a kid who has, let's say, got influenza A, and they're out by the doctor's note for 3 weeks out of school, and that is 15 days. That would trigger a letter? Okay, so my concern is parent gets that, and they're gonna go flipping off the wall.
So what's really nice is that each building administrator is aware if it's been a medical issue, like sometimes there's some serious medical
Oh,
issues,
yeah.
right?
Right.
And so they'll contact the parent and they'll say, you know, we know that this is the circumstance, we have to send a letter, you know, as a matter of state law and compliance. But they do work very closely, and that really is the core work of the social workers, is working with administration, making sure that all kids are safe and that they're getting to school on time, and so the nurse has a hand in that too. So everyone's really working together, so that's when I say that I'm getting letters that look like it's that percentage, I do not believe, I wanna make that very clear, I do not believe that that is the number that we're looking at, nor does Ms. Pratt, which is why we wanna dig deeper and see what it is. You know, is it vacations, is it, you know, what is
So
it?
that's all, this is all state man, you know,
That the
law that
letters
you have
are,
to-
yes,
at
yes.
10 days,
Yes,
okay.
yes.
Okay, well, Tammy, follow up on this, and then if we could get back to the budget, okay?
Just to confirm, truancy, you hit a good, hot button topic with truancy. Truancy is 10 absences a month?
It's 10 absences, like, once you hit the 10th absence, so you've had 9 absences, you hit 10.
In a month?
Overall.
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 Okay, okay,
You hit that 10th absence, you are considered truant.
okay.
And the letter goes out.
And a letter goes out. But a letter goes out before that, because we just want to make parents aware at the 4th absence, heading into the 5th, like, okay, it's important that you're at school, here's, you know, we're concerned, and there's a call followed up by the social worker, they keep a log.
No, I thought that
So-
that was right, but I thought I had heard you say a month, and I'm like, wait a minute. you
Well,
can do
there's
absences
many
for a
ways
month?
to track it. So if you're looking at student attendance data, which will come up in the data team. So the way we'd like to use this information is when we see that there's a pattern of student absences, like 3 times a month, 2 times a month, and then there's areas where it's happening, there's patterns. We want to be able to lay that against the academics and see how,
Yeah, think it's affecting it.
yes.
So
Thank you.
I can speak, according to the High School Performance Index, which is the state's reporting, for last year, it was 8.1% chronic absenteeism. The state average is 9.6%. And then among high needs students, it's 14% in New Milford and 15.6% statewide. So we're slightly below state, but again, to your point, the chronic absenteeism, there's a lot of reasons, and this is something the state struggled with over time, as that, what does it mean? And 10 absences for a student who might be sick, and it's not habitual, but that's where we have social workers reach out, and there's medical notes, and we work with doctors, but even at that case, then we can create like a 504 plan or some accountability, or a plan, that student's not accessing education. So if you're gonna be sick for that long, just an hour or 2 of tutoring, it may not be enough. We may need to come up with a plan to make sure you're accessing your education.
Where this becomes complicated is when students have school phobia, and there's so many absences, so that really requires us to look, because we don't want to lose them, how do we capture them? And that really becomes our focus. It's less about that you're not coming to school, it's more about how do we get you to come to school and keep you here. So,
I'll move on after this comment to think that possibly 800 students reach this level in a school year isn't a budget issue, is incomprehensible. With that, I'll move on to my next question, if I still have the floor, since I was the first. Thank you. SAT development, or PSAT and SAT development. We know our high school students are receiving that PSAT class. My understanding is it's successful because our SAT scores have risen a certain percentage. Am I understanding our SAT scores are up by at least 10 points because we issue this class? Or we provide this class for half the semester? Is that not sufficient, or is there more that we should be doing?
so when we looked at bringing in just PSAT to begin with for grade 9, College Board showed us that just having a student take the assessment will raise a student's individual score, just by taking PSAT. So you'll see that that'll have an impact. When we look at what our classroom teachers are capable of doing with the practice assessments for SAT, because they're not tailored specifically to, they wouldn't have all the tools that Khan has with the tutorials and the specific, I'm at a loss for words, really that tailoring of personalization that you can get with Khan, it makes it hard for them to compete. It's almost like it is an individualized pathway for each student based on exactly what they need in every single area. The way that our classes run right now is through the practice test model and teaching into more global aspects of what it is or how it's taught. And that is interesting because Khan is showing it in multiple ways. Our teachers will try to show it multiple ways, but math has changed. So there's just so many factors. But when we looked at how those courses were competing against what Khan could do, it's hard. It's hard to keep up just because of what Khan offers. And I'm not saying we're looking to eliminate that class, because it's still in there. It's still in the budget. But we would like to introduce Khan, and it could be in addition to, or it could end up being in lieu of. We just have to watch carefully about how things are working and what decisions we're making as we go.
If we could, okay, I'd like to get to the pages, but
Yeah.
is your question embedded in the
It is.
pages?
Yeah.
Okay, then if we could turn
I'm
the page.
sorry, I'll turn over for budget-specific questions.
If we
at
could,
the time of
no,
the-
that's fine. I think that would be an excellent referral to the Committee of Learning, quite frankly. If we could go
Just a quick point of clarification.
37, and then yes.
Okay. Well, actually, this is, it's kind of hard with this particular presentation, because some of the pieces were embedded in the presentation, but not necessarily in the budget book, and the supplemental doesn't have
it.
DOI.
That's exactly what
So
we're doing.
I think it's a little hard to navigate a little bit like how we did last night for that, but I actually had a page 9 in the presentation packet, but it's not in the budget, but in
Okay.
the presentation. Just a quick point of clarification, Joe, too. 800 students, I think, I heard Mr. Smith say 8% of the high school, which would be about 110 students.
Weren't we hearing 15 to 20%?
That was for the highest need population.
Well, I think she had originally, when I
she did.
threw that question at her, that was her
Yeah,
estimate.
yeah, I think that's something that we might want to
We have
refer to
4,000
committee.
students in district, too, so just to.
And
looking
again,
at
it's
that.
based on the letters, just the volume of the letters we're seeing. So we have to
Okay.
sort through that and make sure. So I don't want anyone to leave here
No,
thinking
no,
it's
I-
15%. I want to be really,
Yep.
it's just the sheer volume of that tells us there's something to look into.
Just some clarification, on the bilingual educator, we've triggered that threshold at Sarah Noble, or it's Scottico, because now we're at that 20 threshold.
Yes, yes.
So just a couple questions there, because I actually see some numbers here that might actually be not necessarily next year's budget, but the following year's budget, which we might actually trigger at Helen Plain. I see we're very close there, not only in Spanish, but in Portuguese. We're very close to the high school, which I'm very surprised that we don't have that threshold either in Spanish or Portuguese there. I'm curious, and you said there's some support in some way in these buildings, but when is that threshold triggered? I know it's 20, but is that considered like an October 1st day?
Yes, it's
Okay.
pulled from the October
When we
1st
report.
PSAS
And
report.
how are those languages reported
Interesting.
from families?
That's a great question. So every family that registers with us has to take the home language survey.
Okay.
And then upon entry, our ELL coordinator arrives at the school and actually provides a little assessment to see where the student is in terms of their language acquisition. And then we know what language is taught at home and where the student really would place, so that we can design effective instruction for them at the level that they are with the support that we have.
And I'm curious, as far as a path for that student to become, to acquire the language, is that a 3 or a 4-year pathway, by which we could exit students from that bilingual education?
So they have to pass 3 areas of that Lost Links testing, that language acquisition
Right.
testing, and once they do, they're exited. It's a different trajectory for every student.
I see.
But the majority of students do exit within a few years' time.
So it's not timed out, because I know the old model was maybe like a 4-year you go into the program and you go through. I've got to think districts like Danbury, with 47 different
Yes.
languages,
Yes.
have to have just an army of bilingual educators to be able to meet the state mandate.
And they're very rare to find.
That's the other thing.
We
Understood.
posted for, Ms.
Yep.
Baldelli and I worked closely together and posted.
Right.
And the second
heard
that we
about
had an
this.
applicant that we thought was going to be a great addition, brought her in immediately, and she's worked out phenomenally. Because they're just so rare, and no one's really producing, there aren't a lot of universities that are producing, well, enough of that certification.
Right.
And we're lucky ours is in Spanish, because that, you want to find like a Vietnamese bilingual or something, and to Danbury's point, it's a challenge.
Very
And you
difficult.
have to send a letter to the commissioner. If you don't find someone that you can hire, you have to list all the people that you've tried, that you've interviewed, that didn't work out, how many times you posted. So it's pretty significant, and that is sent in when you write your title grant.
That's it.
Wendy?
I had several questions, only because the formatting is a little bit different, as
Very
JT
well.
said. So can we just start with page
If that's the
38, which is the
consensus.
very first page of that, just the overview?
Sure.
I just have a couple of questions. The certified, non-certified basically is a wash. Now, are all of the substitutes in your budget? Or am I-
The substitutes through,
Well.
yes, there are
yes.
lines for substitutes in my
Yes,
budget.
right, but if you, and I'll get to that in the next
Mm-hmm.
page, but basically, when I come down to other services and look at the difference between professional services and other services, obviously seeing a decrease in other, that's somewhat helpful. But the professional services, do we have, say, is field trips embedded in that line?
Not in
Where-
professional services.
Where is it?
So it has a line of its own.
It's 53,200, okay?
So it is, it's BDZ 10000, object code 55101, page
Right.
39.
Thank you.
And I would like to express that that was not removed from the budget because it was placed in the budget by the board. So I would, we want that decision to be made
I
collectively.
understand, I just wanted to find
Yes,
it
yes.
and clarify that.
That
So.
is in other services.
It's in
Other.
other, it's in that
That's
other
where it
line.
pulls.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you. So just to finish up on that question on professional services, when I go through this whole section, that's going to help me find where the $79,000 increase is. Is there one item that particularly triggers that?
Yes.
I don't see what pulls up into the chart.
Right.
So I'll let Anthony address
Yeah,
that.
the big shift there.
Where is the shift?
It's the third line down on page 39.
See, that $35,000
$200.
part of the shift.
Yep,
In the transfer that we made this year.
got it.
From when we reduced the transition administrator and moved that to a consultant position. We transferred money from salaries. We did this in October of this year, I
That's where I'm
believe.
looking, okay.
Yep, so that increase in next year's budget, really, we've already kind of taken care of that in this year's budget, but it wasn't in last year's budget.
I was looking to follow the trail of that position,
Yeah.
But
and that's
then-
it right there.
That's it.
That's
In
where
the
I.
Scotticoke
Right.
budget, you'll see
You'll see it.
sixty some odd thousand
You're gonna see the
there
.45.
for the transition, right, okay.
Right,
So
so
that captures some of that.
I was looking through the Scotticoke to see what would appear in this budget, in
Okay,
yours,
yes,
and so that's where it
yes.
is, correct? Okay, thank you.
Anything else on 38? Or 39?
I do.
Yes, ma'am.
39, third from the bottom, please. The 56,110. The increase of $6,200.
So that's computer education, so that's actually Ms. Pratt's section of the DOI budget, which I did
Right.
not address here.
Right.
We kept it separately. She's going to
Address that in her
address this in
overview.
her presentation when she also does DOGA.
Okay, fair enough. Heads up, I'm coming that way. And then, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
You'd made in your presentation regarding summer school, which is actually, I believe it's the next page. Do we know what the attendance rate has been over the last, summer school has had quite a history in this district, and many, as we all know. We've had it, then we didn't have it, then we had it without transportation, then we had it with transportation. Is that the short story? And-
Short story.
And so, Where are we attendance-wise? You mentioned we're 80%, I believe?
Yes.
Which is it's a good
Yes,
number.
it is.
What were we 2 or 3 years ago?
So I can only speak to last year,
Yeah.
but last year it was at 80% also.
Okay,
So we've maintained in the
Okay.
second year the same level of attendance rate that we had in the previous year.
okay.
And kids, when I actually go down on site to see the teachers in action, the kids are really excited to be there. So that helps. That sense of wanting to see your teacher and be excited about the work is really evident there.
Making that connection,
Yes.
identification early to give the families notice and work around that is also key, and I know that
Yes.
we've worked on that,
Yes,
so,
I have.
okay.
I can say the year I cut it from the budget, which was like 2013, I believe, under the old model.
Yes.
We had about a 20% attendance
Right.
rate. And that's where we
It's been all over the place, so that's why I
took a
wanted to ask.
hiatus, redesigned it,
Okay.
and the new model seems to be much more effective.
Anybody else on 39? And 40? Brian?
Just under ELL 53210, the purchase service other, what is that?
So that is that increase is the translation service, the in-person translation edition. And I'm absorbing the app cost as well, because I would like to have it on a laptop or on a desktop at the secretary's desk who's doing registration, so that they have it handy and they're able to use it. And Ms. Pratt and I have been working on a collaborative effort to see if we can have that happen. And in working with the company, it really would be a benefit to us to have.
Thank you.
Anyone else on 40? And 41?
Sorry. And you most likely addressed this in your overview, so I apologize. The 53,220, that's up $21,000. It's midway down the page.
That's team. And that is, and I'm actually glad you brought that up, because that is a slight increase in the CREC consultant that we use for support in mathematics. There's going to be some coach movement. The coaches currently for math are split between many schools, and I'm trying to minimize one coach just overseeing one grade level in one building. It's just not as effective as we would want it to be. So the move next year will be to have the primary coach no longer be between the 3 buildings and have her housed at the pre-K to 2 building. We've spoken about that. And then the coach who is at the middle school be at Sarah Noble, so that we can target instruction early. And then we ramped up just slightly the support at Scotticoke, and the coach, myself, and that consultant are working together to create a plan of transition so that the teachers are supported.
Any other questions?
There's 2 more on the page, but just keep going. The staff development, we're up almost $40,000 from 16-17. So we're basically up 10,000 in that line, but over the course. So could you give me a little bit of information on that?
So that line includes things like AP training, which we don't have any new courses, but sometimes teachers will go because they have to as part of the refresher cycle instructionally. That is the teachers, we added for teachers college visits for teachers for individual, it's not really individual, it's like a group professional learning experience where they go into schools and they work with a coach who's modeling the Columbia way, so to speak, and having them practice it live with a class that's not their own. And that has some pretty large benefits at times for teachers who are just wanting that experience. So we don't send many out. This is probably the cost to send maybe 3 teachers out. It's very expensive.
And that's the addition, or is that the total cost?
That is some of the addition. Some of that addition is also the curriculum writing training.
Okay.
Because we're going to have various curriculum written this summer, hopefully. We have math, there's new library media standards, we've got world language that has to be written, some health, but there's so many subjects that we're going to need multiple consultants to do the breakout, so that's also a little bit of an increase in that line.
And then there's the non-substitutes, there's the line there, so, good.
The non-certified substitutes?
Yep, it's right there.
Do you want to speak to that, Ms. Baldwin?
That's our subs for the district.
That's it, that's what
Yeah,
I was
that's
asking,
what-
that's what the
that's-
line
yeah.
item is. So I just wanted to clarify that that is our, that those are our substitutes for the district, it's in that line item.
Yes.
Okay.
And JT?
Sticking with the team training there, that you have the 21,000, so it's a mandate to stay involved in some kind of induction,
Yes.
mentorship, right? And so that, essentially, all the catchings of team live on without the stipend from the state, $500 stipend for the mentors and the dashboard being set up for free. So,
Yes.
so essentially, this is, I don't know, I look at this two ways. This is good that we have to pay a lot for it, because it also means we have some younger staff on, on the payroll, but at the same time, I'm curious how many first, second year teachers we have, how many mentors we have too. I don't expect that
I
number.
can tell you.
Oh, yeah,
Yes, so there's 25 new teachers,
Okay.
there's over 50 mentors.
okay. So this, I'm just playing that out a little bit too, not even just for next year's budget, beyond that. We have a cadre of about 20, 25 teachers. This will be, $20,000 that lives in our budget
Right,
every
that's
year,
right, that's
right?
right.
So I think that's important too. And I think there's a lot of question marks too. I'm curious if this came up at the legislative breakfast too, because, this is one of those things that perked right up. And,
did.
with the state,
Did. I wanted to bring it up, I was ready, but no,
Right.
it already came up actually initially. But, the bigger issue is that because it's been decoupled, we're not all doing the same thing now.
That's
You have
right.
options. So if I'm a teacher and I leave New Milford for any reason and I haven't finished team, I have to prove, and I've told our mentees, pull it out of that, pull it out. Pull it out of the dashboard, keep your own portfolio, because if you go to a neighboring district and they're not doing the papers, or they're not using the dashboard, they will have no proof that you've done what you need to do.
But that's hilarious
So-
because,
Yeah, so we're-
there's some truth to that, but
Yeah.
even the dashboard didn't work either, so.
So I'm just really
They
cognizant
never
of that. I
worked, so.
also need to alert the
This is my
superintendent now,
soapbox, yeah.
when
Right.
they've completed all of their modules. So I had to create a system
Right.
with Josh to make sure that he has attached to the letter that he has to sign, that goes to the state for them to be certified,
Mm-hmm.
that he has the proof that they've completed all of the modules. So this is all the work that we've had to do internally to keep the system going
Right.
in the way that we know it, but we want to advance it and and decouple it from the paper writing and make it more of a, like I said, a cycle of intentional feedback through coaching.
Okay. No, and I think it's money well spent. I mean, supporting teachers at the
Agreed.
beginning of their career.
Agreed.
And I think it also helps, and I look at Ellie, for retaining really great staff and help bring them in under our umbrella. So I think it's money well spent, and I think that I just, to be on record with that. Thank you.
Anything further? And 42, adult education.
I have a question on 43 of adult ed. I know it's a little, it's
ahead.
just a 65%. We're up $2,300 for printing.
Yes, I can speak to that.
Why are we printing more?
Well, it's state required.
Okay.
There's a section of the brochure that she has to print that's mandated by the state of Connecticut, and it
Okay.
has to be printed.
I know that
So
sounds
that
silly
is the
question. but
yes, no, it's
that's-
not. That is the increase, because when she came to me and shared that that was going to be the amount, I couldn't believe it, and she said yes, and I am very careful about the number that I have printed. I don't print any above and beyond what I need, except for about 5, because I
It's
don't
a
want to have.
requirement.
Yes.
I think not only cost, but obviously, to help in our environment, we try and cut down on printing. So
Yes,
it
yes.
wasn't only a cost issue, I was just curious why that was. Okay.
Any others on the, Tammy?
I just have a follow-up question. This, and I know a lot of people have said this, a supplemental document has been great because we're able to ward off some questions that we don't have to address here. Was there a reason that we couldn't include the Department of Instruction because it could have answered the questions?
So you have, actually, DOI and DOGA weren't in the supplemental guide.
Technology's not in there
And
either.
Technology's not either.
Sorry,
And
just keeping a
it-
list.
It's more a factor of the way, so this is the first year we built a supplemental guide, and it was built off the comments and how they came out of Munis. And so this is, we broke adult ed a little separately. It made it complicated. So we had that conversation, I think, yesterday. Could be yesterday, maybe it was the day before. They run together a little bit right now. About how do we create a similar, how do we work so those three areas can be included?
But I think you guys are pretty good about anticipating what we're going to have questions on based upon the numbers.
Sure.
Is there a way that maybe, because we're going to be doing DOGA and technology next week, is there a way maybe that you can pull those out and get us that supplemental so that we
Yeah,
can
it's
look
how
at
the
it?
comments fit in, so.
And I know it's
yes, is the
generalized in a
short
lot of
answer.
areas, but
Yeah.
it really was helpful to really use this one going through the budget.
The goal is eventually to take the comment section of the companion guide and those comments and embed them into each of the lines in your book. And so you have it, you know, I know how disconnected
Yeah.
it is to kind of look
This,
at one
well,
and
when you
find
went
it in
from
the
one
other.
section and, yeah.
Right, and then they're rolled up in the comment guide. So kind of the long-term trajectory is to work either with the town, with Munis. We build this in Excel right now. We take it out of Munis. It is a
Oh, I can
long
tell it's a
and
long,
arduous.
I know, it's not
It becomes complicated to move things back and forth. That's our internal issue, not yours. But long-term, like, we can't exist having 2 or 3 different budget build processes. It really has to be migrated, and so those comments get shown in the line when you're reading it, and you don't have to go and figure out what line and what object code, so that I can see that there's math workbooks in this line. You know, so what you're still seeing is kind of a transition process, and that process doesn't exist yet for kind of the non-standard locations. So that's where the DOI, DOGA, and technology are little, and even facilities, they're kind of outliers from that comment structure. So we may be able to have something, you know, by next week. I can't promise just yet, but we'll work on it and see if we can get you something. And I would think that if we can, let me see what we can put together.
I appreciate
I
it.
recognize that it's complicated, but we
It
didn't want
was
to.
just, it was just so nice to have it and to go
Yeah.
there first before.
Well, it gives you an idea, like, otherwise it's just kind of numbers and increase, it doesn't tell you what's in there, so.
Thank you.
Let's see what we can put together for you.
And anything further on adult education? That's it? Any general questions on the presentation and/or the budget booklet?
You mean of this section?
Yeah, of
Oh.
this section.
You said the budget booklet,
I
that opened up
did,
a whole
I
document.
did,
Check.
You're correct. Okay. Okay, next, middle school.
Oh, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak to the Scotticoke budget. I also would like to begin showing the mission statement, and I have some words that are highlighted on there that I think really resonate with our vision at Scotticoke and how we connect to the district. In addition to being collaborative, you know, we look for ways, and a lot of it is through what we have in this budget, not only to prepare our students, but to challenge them. Because I think a lot of times we look to support students, but there are times where, you know, we need to look very closely at the students that are in need of intervention, so they're not falling through cracks. And we need to look at both ends of the spectrum. Whether we have, and provide opportunities for our high achievers and also support all the students along the way. And I think each of those pieces in that mission statement that are highlighted all connect to our core values and expectations, which are surge and Everything we do at Scotticoke is linked to Surge. I'll speak about PBIS and how Scotticoke has spent time working on that model this year with consultants and within our school building, in addition to with the principals and the staff in K-8. But everything does link to our surge, and a lot of the work that we're doing is tied to student expectations, staff expectations, and the aspirations of students, which link to our superintendent's goals and the board's goals from earlier this year. I broke down the presentation into the areas of belonging, academics, and aspirations, and each of the pieces of the budget fit very nicely. You will definitely see some overlap with some of the things that I'll talk about from the elementary school presentations, in addition to Ms. DeCorpo's presentation as well. So the belonging piece is a very important piece, especially at the middle school level. It's a trying time for a lot of these students as they find their way and navigate the transition between elementary and high school. But PBIS is a model that we've used this year, where we are looking at, we're working with CERC, as Alicia had referenced earlier, along with the elementary schools, and really working on the tools that our classroom teachers can utilize. And what are those Tier 1 interventions for students that we can incorporate at the classroom level before it gets to the administrative level, and where it can become a chronic problem, which leads to other things like the truancy and and other aspects. Our school has really made some gains in implementing the survey process. The need for intervention of students is very clear from the data that we found from our assessments, not just our standardized assessments, but also our common formative assessments and running records, and that really leads into our data teams. And in February we will have our rollout. We do have structures in place for successful data teams. We're excited about that. We utilize our grade level PLCs, which have been in place now for, this is the second year, and I think that it was a very smart move on the district's part to set that model up in Scotticoke. And now that we're rolling out data teams, we have the structure in place, and now and combining that with the tools and with our leadership team, we're able to assess students by a variety of assessments that are specific to the subject. So I can speak in English language arts. We've definitely seen progress in our students that are reading below grade level, administering the running records in the fall for the first time, and now administering now in the winter. We have a very clear understanding of our students and their reading data, something that we were unable to have in the past. So in addition to classroom assessments that teachers use and other ways that they assess students, this data point really helps us. It's very closely tied to the MAP assessment, so it gives us a very clear indication of the whole child and not just looking at a MAP score. We can look now at number of days absent from school, or maybe the number of disciplinary incidents, or we can look at their running record, because a lot of times a struggling reader might be one who's very frustrated. So to have effective data teams in place where we can look at the whole child once again, we're able to really problem solve and provide for students the best we can. We thank the board for their support in field trips over the years. We've instituted our team building field trips, which were in the spring last year, but this year we moved them to the fall, which we thought was very important to do. So we got that off the ground and running, and 6th and 7th grade have been through their field trips at the start of the year. Connects very nicely to student belonging and all of our positive behavior intervention strategies. We also have some very low-cost budgetary items that we're very proud of. Something as simple as our Never Too Busy letters or our newly formed Principal Student Advisory Council. These are are pieces, these are student belonging pieces that we can put into place that are no cost to the district, which I think really support the student belonging. And of course, our clubs, our activities, our sports, that is seen in this budget and these items, and the continued support is very helpful. We've also added the unified sports, as you know. We added bowling this year in addition to basketball and track and field. And now we're looking to also partner with Brookfield, who's just started their program at a middle school. So it's very exciting for students of special needs to be working with regular ed students on a common goal. And those last few bullets on the next slide related to student belonging, I really wanted to show a mix of some of the things we do that are drivers to the budget and that really have a direct impact on student achievement and student belonging. But we also have things like the Say Something initiative, the Start With Hello. Those are things that we do in partnership that are free, either through the Sandy Hook Promise. So we're constantly looking for ways where we can support student belonging, also support our PBIS initiative, but try to keep the cost down so that we can really offer more to students. Our newly formed SAFE Club, which is the Schaghticoke Allies for Equality, that you approved in November, has been very successful in really looking at students. There's something for everyone at Schaghticoke in some way, and I think that was a club that was much needed at this point in time. And along with our Leo Club, in our collaboration with the high school, when they send the names club down in the spring to talk to our 8th graders, those are all things that we're very proud of that support student belonging, and they're all factors in the budget that help us each year. One other thing I did want to say regarding the John Halligan presentation, that was supported by our PTO. So our PTO is extremely involved at Schaghticoke, and we're very proud of our PTO. But they had funded that, which ties directly to our district initiatives. And then the second assemblies there that are coming up on January 31st, the John Morello presentation, he's going to be at the high school in the morning, and then he's coming over to Schaghticoke. That was funded by the New Milford Council, Substance Abuse Council. So again, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the community piece to this all. We want to try to partner with the community in any way that we can. But that was fully funded by that council, which has a direct tie to student belonging. So we go into the academics piece, which you'll see a lot of tie-ins. We're very connected, and I think that with both district initiatives and the other schools as well. We are in our second year of the TC units in reading and writing. We're in year 2 of writing, and we've definitely made some gains where our teachers have been through it already one time and have worked with a literacy coach or consultant to kind of iron out what's the best method of delivery of instruction. And we're spending more time now on unpacking the reading. The new reading units are coming out, and we have some structures in place, so we're ready to take that on next. Very similar model as the elementary schools had discussed last night. We also, are very proud of the work in our connected math program in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. It's a combined effort with not only district support, but the collaboration of teachers during their PLCs throughout the day. They're able to align, they're able to give common formative assessments so that we can see how students are performing, and it might be as simple as the wording of a question that might be throwing a lot of students off, and that might be a simple change that can be made under the direction of the math coach or the consultant, and by changing that one question and administering the assessment, the next time you can see a difference. So sometimes there's just other professional aspects of when you look at the nature of assessments that help us in really getting to the root of, where are our student areas of growth and how can we help them. Our science department is continuing their work on aligning to the national standards, NGSS. We have department members that have trained. We have done a trainer of trainer models to save money in the district, where we have our staff that actually can work with a group in a department meeting or a PLC, and it's been very beneficial. Their assessments are aligned, and now they're calibrating, so they're able to look at, again, question type, where are students struggling, where do they need more support. Our co-teaching initiative is continuing. We're taking the next steps to not only just have a special ed and regular ed teacher team teaching together in the class, but now we're looking at taking the next step of really using that planning time they have together to create opportunities where there's stations work, where it's more collaborative in nature, where we have a couple classrooms where we put on a whiteboard on the back of the room so that we can kind of have two things going on at once. We can really differentiate within the classroom, and it's not just this stand and deliver model where a teacher's in the front and everyone's listening. We really looked at each classroom and the specific need of what students need, and there might be, and especially in middle school, we want to break down our lessons into smaller chunks because of their attention span, as you can imagine. I mentioned about our PLCs and grade level data teams. We're now transitioning those into data teams. So it was very helpful to have the structure in place, and made that change 2 years ago when we changed our schedule. But now, with that piece in place, our department leaders and our team leaders are now taking the lead and working with our administration to roll out data teams in February. We're very supported by the coaches in our district. The work, as Alicia said earlier, is definitely, it's job-embedded work, and we see it not only at our school, but any meetings that we have in district. We are happy that we're all on the same page. There's continuity. We have nice conversations of collaboration, not only in the building, but vertically as well. I have learning labs up there, and math labs and study halls. These are all opportunities for students to get what they need. It's very similar to the WIN model in the elementary schools, where it's a 25-minute period that runs a flex off of the lunch period, where students can check in with their teacher for attendance and then go to a room of that content area where they're struggling. And sometimes they don't go to that room, or the teacher sends them a pass and they don't make it there, but we help them get there. Sometimes we'll actually go in and change their schedule so that they go to that classroom. But we make it work because we want them to go where they need that assistance. We're very proud of our TAG program, and Dr. D. St. Croix does a wonderful job in our building, and we're very proud of all the opportunities. I could spend probably a whole presentation talking about everything that we do, and just having, seeing the kids in the Math Olympiad and all the other events. It's a big piece of what we have at Scotticoke. Academic fitness definitely is one of our clubs and activities, and although it's great for some students to get involved with extracurriculars and try to get out of academia for a while, this is a very nice intervention tool that we use specifically with when we meet with parents, or if we meet with, sometimes we really like to use academic fitness for students that may have transportation issues where they can't get home at a certain time. So we might work out an intervention plan where we work with the parent to have the students stay after school and work through academic fitness, and then we have the buses that take the kids home to the different points in time on different points in town 2 days a week. So that has been a nice little intervention that we use. Ms. DeCorpo mentioned about the summer algebra readiness program that we started last summer. That is seen in this budget, as you know. There were 11 students out of the 17 that were able to go straight to Algebra 1 and taking the course and showing 80% mastery. And that was very important to have, because students were always seeing, sometimes they're just seeing that they're just following this track in math, and it was important to know that you're not locked in place because of a test score, that it's really a combination. Your math placement is determined upon the teacher recommendation. your MAP score, your common formative assessment scores, and then looking specifically at those problem-solving tasks that they do in math class on summative assessment. So that was just another layer that was huge to offer to some students and to see some success. And then the professional development piece, the first Thursday PDs have been great, and we have a model that's very similar to the high school where we have our content area groups who get together, but we've seen a direct impact on student achievement by utilizing those sessions. The student aspirations slides, I have two of them. I think it really all starts with structure, and in this budget, in the school counseling line, you'll see the Naviance program, which we want to take to the next level. We have students who log in and create goals, but we want to have our school counselors try to increase the amount of lessons that they can push into classrooms and deliver to students, but also tie it to all the work that we do with growth mindset at Schaghticoke. So Naviance, I think, is the framework that we'd like to use, and the students use it at the high school as well. So it'd be good to get started early on that. And the Assistant Superintendent's Office has worked very closely with my administration and our school counselors on really looking at specific lessons. And that first Thursday PD, one might ask, what does the school counselor do during that time if they're not analyzing assessments? Well, they're working on crafting these lessons to implement to these students so that we can support the program.
And some of that really is taking an assessment to see how your strengths align with jobs and careers that you might be interested in, so that we can start to look at what are their aspirations, and as we mentioned in COL, survey them and see if we can create courses that will create pathways and opportunities for students. So this is the beginning of that.
So we are trying in every way to differentiate for students. Our Project Lead the Way program is growing. I'd love to see it in 6th grade, but I agree that it's not possible right now. But I can tell you that a lot of the focus in that particular program has been around design and modeling for the past year and a half. But we're looking at expanding it and really looking at pieces like green green architecture. And then the robotics and automation pieces are parts that we're looking at delving further into lessons. And the challenge is, for what we're able to offer at Schaghticoke, how can we deliver as many pieces of information for a successful Project Lead the Way program, and how deep can we go, because it is a very, very thick curriculum. And I think that our staff do a very great job of giving that opportunity to 7th and 8th graders. The bilingual teacher we spoke of earlier, it's crucial at Schaghticoke, because I know right now with looking at the students that we have and not having that full-time person, even having the one day I think is huge, because when the teacher's there, we can see how successful it would be in the future if we had that person every day. So it's a struggle at times when we have systems in place to do the best job we can with our own staff, but we need someone specialized in that area for the needs of those students, and the number is growing. Not only are these students able to look at lessons that are directly aligned and they're the KELP standards, but also we want to look at providing small groups with this teacher, looking at push in and pull out, and also any other opportunities under the direction of our assistant superintendent, and we work very closely on that. Our transition of our 5th graders to 6th grade, in addition to our 8th graders to 9th, is important, in that I think that meeting with our staff together, administration and the consultant, and looking at, we already have a plan crafted of what we've done in the past and what we'd like to do for this year to provide that transition for our 5th graders that are coming to Schaghticoke. And looking at other ways other than coming and visiting the building. I mean, there's other things that we want to do, and I think that we've already taken those steps to improve that process, because it is crucial going from stepping foot into a different building, as you know. I spoke about the clubs and activities and interscholastics and everything that we have to offer in addition to unified sports, and you can see that that is obviously tied to the aspirations of students as well. And then this last slide on student aspirations are just other things that, some of which are found in our budget and others that are, community-based, but they're important to mention. Anytime we can connect with the community, the Lions Club poster contest that we have, or we had the VFW commander. One of the commanders came and presented an award to students, a student in the classroom among the peers, which was great. And it doesn't always have to be at going out to the CAS Awards banquet or anything like that. Sometimes we have resources right within our community that we can bring in, and there's no cost associated with that. And it's just good community connections. We're proud of our music program. I'd have to at least mention that in any presentation. I think I do. Not only are we have a nice feeder program for the high school, but we work very closely with the elementary schools as well, as there's numerous events that we have where you have, multiple grade levels working together. And, Geography B is coming up, so we've got that coming up next week or so, the finalists, where, we send the winner on to the state competition, and that's always nice to have. And we try to partner as best we can with community, and sometimes it's outside of New Milford. Goodwin College, we stumbled across that. That was really nice, but for them to come and bring their 50-foot mobile van free of charge for 3 days for 8th graders was amazing. So I'm already talking to them about bringing them again next year, and those are the kinds of things that, we like to do that link to this aspiration. I know some students who were having a difficult time really connecting at Scotticoke, but that experience just really opened their eyes, and it really helps. And then, of course, our partnership with the high school. We have freshman evening coming up, incoming freshman night. Our school counselors were supposed to come today, but they'll be coming on Friday now to speak to our 8th graders. That's an event that I love seeing the students as they've grown through the 3 years, and now looking at them and thinking that they're going to be high schoolers next year. So this is our school climate goal for our staff and for our SMS community. And those are 3 very important pieces that link directly to all 3 parts of that pie that you saw, and that's student engagement, student belonging, and we can't forget about our teachers. The teacher growth mindset is so important. So all the work out of Ms. DeCorpo's office in terms of supporting teachers, and not just through team and but also looking at our vets and how can they acquire professional learning so that they can try to find other ways to grow. What areas can they grow as well? So I have a few slides on the increases that I thought were important that kind of jump off the page that you should know about. And the first one is BLD 10002 in ELA. That's 56460. And that is linked to our TC classroom libraries. There's an increase there due to several reasons. We're looking at differentiating books for our students. If you look at our data, you'll see that we have students that range in grade level, several grade levels behind, to on grade level to a grade level above. And there is a continuum of students on that where we need to try to find the just right book for them. We look at student choice, we look at student interest, we look at clear connections to the curriculum and what TC has to offer. And these are all research-based materials, so we devote a lot to that because we have a lot of value in the program, and it is a program that's used district-wide. And these are all collaborative decisions that administration works with department chairs and the literacy coach, along with Alicia's office, and really looking at what are the best materials that we need to have successful classroom libraries. And the volume piece I forgot to mention, there's a volume aspect to that as well, because there might be that book that kid really needs, and it might be that book that they need to read at that point in time, and it might not be available. And we found that we've stumbled across that where there's nothing like, giving a student a book that they don't want to read. You want to give them something that they want to read, that the teacher has can make that professional judgment that that is a good book for where they stand right now in their process of reading. There's an increase in the reading line, BLD 10006, 56410. So that 7,500 number is attributed to our intervention libraries. So as Ms. DeCorpo referenced earlier, we have reading teachers that are providing targeted interventions for students that are struggling. They're struggling in their English language arts class, and we're looking at the book club units, which they're resources that come with shelves as well. So they're all strategically set up for students of grade levels. And with our running records data, we're able to really link the books to where the students are. If we have a student, as an example, who's 2 grade levels behind, our goal at Scotticoke is not just to say, well, we want to bring them up to reading level. We want to give them the correct tools to try to bring them up 1 grade level and close the gap. They may not necessarily get right back to on grade level, in a year, and we understand that. And we really need to look at it in a case-by-case basis. But again, research-based, choice, volume, these are all things that we consider when we look at these resources. And then the other admin, BLD 24943, that's a furniture line of 9,000 that we did not use last year. We did not use that line. So there are stand-up desks that we found have been very successful. You may or may not recall when I presented last year that we talked about we did purchase some of those desks, but it came through the special education budget. What we found is that there are students that can benefit from it, that are regular ed students or students in need of just standing up or movement or anything like that. So we've seen success with those. So it looks like an inflated number, but the main reason is because I'm looking at spreading those out across teams so that we can actually, and not just position it in one specific department. So that's why it comes out of that line. There's also an amount in the budget for kidney-shaped tables that we're really interested in. Very important with the TC curriculum and when teachers are conferring with students, or if we have a co-teaching experience where one teacher might be consulting with 3 or 4 students. They've got that nice shaped table in the corner of the room. And again, it's getting to the classroom environment. If the students have a comfortable environment and they're not just arranged in straight rows and desks, you're going to get a greater impact in terms of student learning if they're comfortable. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Joe, then Bill?
Bill had it up first, but
Oh,
Go ahead, Joe.
so, the desks, the stand-up desks, are those like the Barra desks that you can elevate or lower?
Yes,
They're right. You can raise them.
you
just
can
with your
you can
hand.
adjust them the way you need to
Where you
adjust
sit
them.
or
Yeah.
stand. Okay.
Yep.
Under library books, BLD 22235.
okay, what page on, Joe?
Oh, I'm sorry, 24.
I plan on going through them
Oh,
page by
one by
page.
one? I'll wait
Do you have a
till we're at
question?
page 24. That's it.
Bill?
See, great minds think alike. That's the same question Joe had. But I have it a little further. Is that for a specific kind of kid? Because there's a program in New York called NEST for high-functioning autistic kids that they use that for because they can't sit still. Is that the impetus behind that?
I think there's a number of reasons. I think that type of student would definitely benefit from that. Sometimes it's just simple as teachers sometimes have to think of, and it links to PBIS because you want to work on interventions, and it could be classroom behavior as well. But if instead of having to send the student out, go get a drink, and they're missing instruction, something as simple as the desk, and it's not go to the desk because you're not. It's something that I think would be a successful intervention that can be put into place, not necessarily sit for this particular lesson. So I think that
So
there's
that's
a couple
like a
different-
separate desk in the corner that they can go to?
No, it would be in the classroom.
That's what I mean, in the classroom. Not in the corner like the dunce Catholic I used to do. No, but it's in a, nobody sits there, it's not assigned, but it's there where a kid can go to. Is that correct?
It could be differentiated in that way, or it could be that, the team of teachers might discuss that, this might be a good option. Maybe once the mini lesson is done in ELA and students kind of go, you have a couple that go to the kidney desk, you have a couple that go and work in a small group of 4 here, you have a couple students
Okay,
that
so
might
it's
be
an
working with the
option.
teacher, so, yeah, an option.
Good,
We're
thanks.
using the flexible seating in K-5, and we're finding that giving students choice around how they function, asking a student to sit for 6 hours a day and pay attention, that movement really does have an impact on their engagement.
Sort of like sitting at a budget meeting for 3 hours.
Something like that. Like, we get a couple here.
You really should try one. They're actually very fascinating.
Okay.
They are,
You have one in your house?
kinda.
Okay.
Everyone in my classroom, so you can come in.
Oh, thank you.
And, I have to say, one of the reasons why, that, I was thinking about it last year, and I was like, I wish we put in more of them. But the teacher feedback has been tremendous too, so it's not just that it's another option for students, it's kind of like a tried and true kind of thing, where teachers have said, I've seen, my teammate using this desk, can I move it into my room? And I'm like, they're fighting over these desks, and so it's shown signs of
Yeah,
of
that's good.
progress, yeah.
Brian?
I have a stand-up desk, by the way, and it has a little rocking bar. That's the best. But anyway, not about the stand-up desk on my question. Actually, I have a question about the team-building field trip. I think it's great that you do it in the fall. And I'm wondering if there's follow-up throughout the school year, if there's opportunities to bring people in to do team building within the school.
Yeah, there's a couple things that happen throughout the year, some of which is promoted and other is just really that team's like kind of identity and their uniqueness. I think the team leaders do a very good job of that. Our 10 character counts that we have each month, each team is assigned one, and it's their responsibility to really come together as a team. For December was compassion, and we had, I think it was 6 Blue, where they came together and they wrote letters and sent them off to people in the military and everything, and then there was a fundraiser that was linked to that. So there's a lot of different ways. I could be here, talking quite a bit, but in terms of the specific things that are occurring on that field trip, I know that when they come back, there's definitely discussion. But the teachers on the trip, it's their job to kind of follow through so they can really speak to the needs of their students throughout the year, and working closely with the administration and on how we can do that and support them.
Andrew?
A couple of points of clarification. For the Naviance, did you say you're currently using that or you're going to begin using that?
We're currently using it. You'll see in the budget that I want to make sure it's 2,200. Let me just
Is it in licensing?
Where it's at?
Okay, so on page 27, the 53,200 under guidance, so it's the second group going down. You'll see the 0 to 2,200, and the reason why was last year we didn't budget for it and we had to use a different account. So this year I positioned the money in the correct spot. So that's why we do have it for this year, but the money had to be taken out of it. We had to use another account to pay for it.
So when do the kids access this?
So they access it during they can use it during Learning Lab and Study Hall, but we have the school counselors, they actually push into the classroom. So in the fall, they pushed into technology classes, because tech meets once in a 6-day, so they can hit all the students per grade level. They'll go in there, and then in the winter, they'll go into another special. So they might go into either a health, or they'll go into another one, so that they can get all of the students. Our goal would be in some way down the line is that if there's some kind of way that we can develop some kind of advisory program and build it into our schedule, then we would think that this would be a very good way to incorporate Naviance and take it to the next level. So we're looking at that in the future, but right now we don't have the position.
And then my other question, the project Lead the Way, is that teacher certified to use the equipment in that room yet? The shop class, the wood?
The teacher in the room is certified in math and.
Right, but my understanding was they're not using the equipment in that room because the teacher has not yet received certification to do that. So when we were talking about the Project Lead the Way class many years ago, it was supposed to be a culmination of the Project Lead the Way and kind of the wood shop is what my understanding was. Maybe my understanding was incorrect, but it's been 3 years now and we still don't utilize that equipment in that room. So the students are doing the Project Lead the Way, which is fantastic, but I think there's also other skills from those pieces of equipment that students can gain that we were not supposed to lose when we eliminated the shop class, that we've not yet reacquired.
And the teacher is utilizing the elements of the program and the computer software as well, but there's actually, the room was redesigned last year where we were able to still have that component off to
Right,
the
we were,
far
yeah,
end of
we
the
were in
room.
there, we saw.
So, when they were doing the orthotic lesson or whatever, they're using that piece as well in conjunction, because part of the whole inquiry process is creating, so I know that we're tying in opportunities to be able to still successfully do that, but at the same time, deliver the Project Lead the Way curriculum.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, if we could turn to page 20. Tammy?
Yeah, I just have a question on this page regarding the decrease of the transition administrators. Who are we losing?
Yeah, I can answer that. We did that, we actually already did
We
that.
did that.
It went, because you're going budget to budget now. So we made that change in October when we removed the transition administrator from Scotticoke and moved that person to a consultant doing the
Okay.
social emotional. But you see it here because that happened after last year's budget
Okay.
had started. And the other thing you'll see is the teacher of the deaf that we also removed from this year's budget.
teacher of
The deaf,
Oh, okay.
that we removed earlier this year. And so you see kind of this budget correcting for or accounting for those shifts that we already did this year.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Can I just follow up
Sure.
on that question? But the .45, is it fair to say that it was reallocated, that position?
Yeah, so we.
Because when you look at the
yes and
overview of
no. The position itself was eliminated.
it was, however, the actual the actual existence is still there in our district of a .45.
No,
Okay.
the dollars
The dollars.
are still there.
Thank you.
But the position
It's a different
is not.
position.
That-
I understand.
There is no FTE.
Correct.
But there is a consultant position paid through professional services in the DOI budget. That was that increase that you saw before.
Right.
But yes, the dollars are there, but the position itself is gone.
Right, because that opens up the dialogue when you have a position, is it truly eliminated out of the budget, or is it transferred into another line item in another dollar? So,
Right, and as a consultant, that dial can
understand.
be moved much differently, but
Yeah.
it's not an FTE.
Yep.
Yeah.
21? We're getting to 24, I'm not forgetting, Joe.
21.
Oh, no, 25.
Are we good?
I'm 22.
22? JT?
Dr. Longo, thank you for your presentation. And I really appreciate it, and I'm sure the board does too, kind of tying board goals in here too, so. There's a question about the library books there. On that 56,420, you said this ties into some of the TC kits, the teacher college, readers, writers, workshop, I'm thinking, right? Is that the 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, or all across, or just the 6th grade?
Yeah, that's all 3 grade levels.
Okay. So my follow-up, maybe more for Alicia, I'm curious, how does that TC model if we play that through in middle school, how's that going to segue for some of the high school literacy standards that we'll use in social studies, and I'm thinking English? One of my concerns is there, for some of the SAT type standards that we're looking at, there's more claim and evidence, and writer's workshop, the reader's response model might be a little bit different than that. So I'm just wondering, from a curriculum standpoint, is this the first time we've gone through with 6th, 7th, and 8th, and is that, I don't know, just I'm curious on your thoughts on that.
So this is our second year of writing implementation at Schaghticoke, and what I've done is work with the department head at the high school to take a look at the rubrics that they're using and how they may tie in. You may recall that we had to rewrite this past summer, on research and writing, that course that's offered at the high school. It's an elective, but it's directly tied to the units, the Columbia units, same genres, same assessment structure, same workshop structure. What I've done with the, in conjunction with the department head and the team at the high school, is discuss, like, what does this mean for us? Can we extend the rubric so that it incorporates what we need for students to be able to cite claims and make evidence in their writing, and can we do it in a way that's a hybrid model? What we've done this past year is, actually very recently, and we have continuity happening, is I was able to locate, thanks to the department head and another teacher, a high school affiliate from Columbia who is an active teacher in the classroom and does professional learning through an organization, came out to us on our last professional development day and ran the entire workshop approach and what it looks like at the high school. And what was really amazing, because they were on the edge of their seat, was how to identify a student's need in their writing and help them use mentor texts to get them to be able to cite claim and evidence and support their own position. And so that was directly aligned, and her work is continuing in those Thursday after-school meetings at the high school. We've worked with her to Skype in to their time together to continue that discussion, because initially in the beginning of this year, they were looking at portfolio work, but they quickly realized through active conversation with one another that although the idea is a great one, there were other steps that they need to take to get there. So that's where we are. I hope that makes sense, but it's evolving.
Right, but no, it's good to hear that there's a consistent approach across the district for that through line, and not just to say, okay, this is what we do in elementary, this is what we do in middle school,
Yes.
and then we do this in high school. So I just, if there's a through line there and it's working and we're bearing fruit, then I think it's worth pursuing. Thank you.
Tammy?
If I just have two quick questions on this page. The first is Gen Ed, the very last line item, the furniture and fixtures. I know it's a small amount, but we went from 000 to over 2,000. Are those also again for desks?
Right, so those are the kidney-shaped tables.
Those are the kidney, okay.
So it appears in that line, and then the standing desks appear in the other admin
In the other,
section.
okay, good. And in the art line, and I've seen this throughout the budget, that's usually that number goes up because of salary increases. This has gone down by 23,000. Did we lose a teacher, or is this just by hiring someone at a lower step?
No, we had a teacher retire, then we eliminated a position from Sarah Noble, and then the art teacher from here went there, but isn't at the same level of experience.
So it's just a reduction in salary, the same amount of staff?
Yep.
Excellent, thank you.
23? Joe?
Under Tech Ed, 51115, the salary increase?
Same answer for the art teacher. We had a teacher that left the district who was on, I believe, step 2 or 3 of the teacher contract, hired a teacher that was on a much different step of the teacher contract. So no added staff, just a shift of, and really for the most part, when you see salary lines that shift significantly like that, that's usually what happens, is these are tied to actual teacher salaries. And so it was a teacher left and a new teacher was hired to replace her, and that person came in at a much higher step.
I'm really hoping to hear that we hired another Tech Ed person to increase that program. That's what I would have liked. Next page.
I think we would have liked that too, so.
Okay, 24, Joe.
Where were we? Library.
I have a question on 23.
Oh,
I'm sorry,
okay.
if I could just.
He's gotta get that license.
So sorry, Joe, I
That
promise I'll be
library
quick.
is not gonna.
It's not gonna get, under social studies, 56410, we had a negative 35,000 for non-consumables.
So those are the textbooks
Right.
that were purchased for 8th grade last year.
Okay,
Okay, 24.
You should just skip to 25.
all right.
Joe.
We're purchasing $13,000, $14,000, $15,000 worth of books every year. And why? Or what area? And with this year, it's increasing to 16,000.
Okay, so that line, that's the 56,420 in library. So in our library media center, there's, and I know that elementary schools had spoken to this last night as well. In addition to replacement costs, there's also ebooks, which we purchase, and their prices are pretty expensive for the titles that we need for our specific readers. Our library media specialists and our English and reading teachers have a Google sheet that they keep of titles, and we're able to look at all those categories that I talked about earlier about student interest. We look at volume. We want to have copies of the books available either in a classroom library or down in the LMC so that there's access for students. So that they might be down in the LMC and there's a copy that's not available in the classroom library, but they're able to have access. So those are all the different variables. There's a lot of cataloged media in the library as well. So last year's number, we're not able to do what we needed to do to have enough resources in that library last year. So this year, that's the reason for the 3,000 increase.
So we're fully utilizing the ebooks, and we all understand buying a book through that medium is not a lot cheaper than going to a bookstore and buying a hard copy. But we are utilizing all of that, and we're seeing more of a demand for ebooks.
Yeah, you can start.
So, each of our librarians has Follett Destiny software that they utilize. And so what we've done, when Dr. Longo speaks of that Google Doc, we have lists of which texts are within Follett Destiny that we've acquired or that are offered through that system that are written in several different languages, that have multiple copies that we can utilize, so that we're accessing that database as well as purchasing classroom libraries that are directly connected to the work that we're doing in classrooms. So this is an expansion not only of the reallocation of books that may be migrated out of the library as they go through each year and go through their library stack and decide what should stay and what will go. Those actually make their way into classrooms as well. But when they do replacements, they work collaboratively with the teaching staff to determine what their needs are as well as look at what the library's needs are. So this line over time kind of ebbs and flows based on the needs of the library and the library's connection to the greater good in the building.
Am I understanding you correctly that it's less about casual reading and more about classroom instructional?
It's actually, we love it to be all the same. Casual reading and classroom reading are really becoming, I'm not joking, one and the same. You're choosing a book that is high interest to you, that you want to either learn something from or you're hooked on it because it's part of a series, and we're able to provide that to you so you can keep on reading. We want to make sure that we're positioned to do that for all kids.
And we also think of all the other departments as well, because we want to look at a series of nonfiction and fiction. I forgot to bring that part up, but our ELA libraries, we're looking at classroom libraries, and sometimes the teachers right now, we're at a point where they have to go in and out of classrooms to share with each other because we just don't have the volume that we need. But then you think of all the other subjects and if they have research projects and things like that, so we have to be able to support all the other departments as well.
Thank you.
JT?
We're on 24?
Yep.
Just a point of clarification here, Dr. Longo, the bilingual salary there. I'm assuming that's a placeholder there?
It is.
And I'm just curious, maybe Ellie can answer this too. What's the placeholder at for that, for a position like that, or is that just kind of a?
Midpoint,
It's Master Step 8, which is midpoint in the teacher's contract, the new figure for the 18-19.
Okay. So master's 8, and then that could be at above or below. Right. Okay, thank you.
Okay, page 25. JT?
All right, let me use up my last question. So furniture and fixtures, I have to say, I can support that, and having seen some middle schools that have used this model, it really is fascinating to watch how different and allowing that freedom of movement, especially for some of these young adolescents, can be very, very good. I'm curious to kind of come at it from the other way, and I'd asked last night about the per pupil allotment that the elementaries had in the intermediate school. I'm curious what the per pupil allotment is at the middle school, and is this kind of a little bit of that discretionary funding that you're using with that line item?
The answer to the second part is yes. That is what Dr. Long had taken from his per pupil. I'll get to the dollar amount in a minute. And he chose to allocate a certain portion of that to that furniture line. And I'll get to the per pupil for that.
Pretty much anything outside of salaries, when you look at the, there's a few pieces, telephone line, I'm looking on page 25, for example. You know, the
Any
telephone line's not discretionary.
Any telephone, security, utility, or salaries are really not part of that per pupil
I
allocation.
was gonna speak to that so you could look up the number.
Yeah, he's
Sorry.
filling right here. He's filling. Great job last night. Just let him keep going.
Well, actually,
Yeah, we can wait on that.
We can put it together. What I'll do is I'll just give you a chart of all the per pupils.
Right. Yeah.
On how we do that for buildings.
Right.
We can
I think
do
it's
that.
just interesting for the board users. We've never really used that, or I haven't looked at that number, and I think that helps us maybe think a little bit, and I said this last night, not to belabor the point, but, you know, that it gives a little discretionary decision-making and authority to our principals to decide what the needs in your buildings are. And I you know, elementary, right, you know, principals, like we said that last night too, and I think it's just important for us as a board to step away a little bit, and while we have line item control, we want them to have some of that control.
Well, to say, like Dr. Lee, you were asking about the library books. So now Dr. Longo can meet with the teachers in his building and say, kind of, here's my controllable pot.
Yep.
You know, how much of that, how important are desks compared to how old is our library, compared to what kind of shape are our classroom libraries in? How many textbooks do we need this year? You know, and this way, it's a conversation among the schools. So I'm sure there was a conversation of, well, our desks, the stand-up desks, more important than the kidney desks, more important than adding library books, and, you know, and all of these other lines in his budget that he can control, the supplies, and allowing them to kind of move that slider and decide where it goes.
But to that point exactly, if that line item changes, and let's say that the number changes throughout the budget process, there's still that discretion. The administrators and the principals and the staff would get together and decide what is left out of that line item to see what, you know, what could be moved around. So it's a beginning point, you know, it may stay, it may not, but that truly is where the discretion is, you know.
Well, sometimes you see, like, in August or September, or, you know, there's a transfer, because, you know, that line was cut, but as a school, we really need that, so we're gonna reprioritize what we have and move
move it from
dollars into
another
that.
line item.
Yeah.
So that amount, the per pupil to Scotticoke Middle School is $354.80. That was given to them when they began to build their budget.
with or without tax.
Push energy to it.
Okay, page 26.
I have one question on this
There's no
page.
511 explanation.
The very top line, Dr. Longo, the 51180, the 6,376, is that for stipends for clubs?
Yeah, I have that dollar amount, so the.
I believe so, but I'll defer to.
It's
No,
not in
there's a
the-
small increase there because on the teacher's contract, all the stipends got a 2.2% increase, but the large part of that, $6,000, is tied to, I believe what Mr. Corpo had in our presentation about the algebra stipend at SMS being new.
Yes. That's 5,000.
Last year we paid for it out of a grant,
Yes.
This year, we can't because they're no longer a Title I school. And
Correct.
so we have to absorb
absorb it.
costs.
So I just want to be clear, because I had the same question. It wasn't outlined in the Scotticoke Middle School sheet here that is missing. So that's part of the stipend, is that what you're saying?
That 5,000 of,
Okay.
5,000 of that is for the new stipend associated with SMS algebra. And the rest of that is increases to stipends that are, existing stipends that are tied to the new
Right.
teacher contract.
And that stipend is, it includes planning and also it's to run 2 sections. We were able to run 2 sections with it. So it's not just the one week. There's actually a break in between for those who may be going on vacation. We ran another section to capture the rest of the kids, to get as many as we possibly could.
Okay, thank you.
And page 27.
I just have one question on this page. It's down in sped, the 258%, it's a small number, but I'm just wondering what it is, the 1701.
One second.
Sorry, it's 53,200, it's like the fourth from the bottom.
Okay, professional services. Okay, so those are the programs that we use to support the special ed students using Key Math, A to Z, Raz Kids, eSolution.
So it's the
and
academic programs that support their learning.
Right, and they're all out of professional services.
Thank you.
We also have IXL licenses. We purchase additional ones. And every sixth grader has an IXL license that's built into the budget, but we license for additional ones out of that line for students who are not in sixth grade that don't have access. We
But
might have
still
some
need it,
seventh and eighth
yeah.
graders that might use the program.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. We're going to have a little halftime here for about 3 minutes, if you don't mind. So, we'll commence in a couple of moments.
Last night wasn't bad, though.
No?
We were gone already. But I know when you're not feeling well and you're like,
I know. This is.
a lung is about to come up here.
Anthony, got the, per pupil for the high school already? I figured you'd get that. Ready for JT's questions. Let's rumble, let's go. It's 9:30. I'm with you. Okay.
Okay, after recess, now, Mr. Shagru.
All right.
I'll pay Sebastian.
Pass it, all right. That's each one, is that the thing, right?
No, that's not that thing. After reviewing that, there's about a couple pages a little light of that, but I'll walk you through some of the things. So, as it's been stated last night and tonight, I too want to thank the board for the opportunity to present. I think it's a great opportunity for you folks to get an idea of what goes on behind the scenes. I would be remiss if I didn't thank, my team that goes into this. As we talked about discretionary and that type of thing, Wendy and JT had mentioned it tonight. I mean, it really is a collaborative effort with the department chairs, and we work together for the last couple of months building this budget at the school level. So I do want to acknowledge their input and their participation in this as well. So you've seen our mission statement. I'm not going to go bring that back up to you, but basically what we've done is we've taken our mission statement, pulled out some of those salient points as Dr. Longo alluded to, and we have made a WAVE acronym where we want our students to work, we want them to achieve, we want to value civic responsibility, and we want to empower our students for the next level in life after New Milford High School. This is a common thread. You've seen that last night, you've seen it tonight, and you've seen it here as well. New Milford High School basically worked with the work, took the work that you folks did in the summer and developed our New Milford High School goals and theories of action by also embedding that WAVE acronym in there, where the first one is student belonging, and we want to value others in the learning community. We want to treat people with respect and kindness. We want to empower our students. Again, I'm trying to move through. I don't need to read the slides to you. Also, we're relative to, obviously, student aspiration. It's important at the high school level. We want students to come to terms of experience a variety of things at the high school level. We expect our students to leave far differently as people than when they entered at 14 years old. And we hope that by the wide range of offerings, both curricular and extracurricular, that they have come to terms kind of and have a better idea of who they are, what drives them, what they're passionate about, and therefore what they aspire to be and pursue. Obviously, as a school, academics is what we're all about, and those standards of excellence is what we try to achieve on a daily basis in the classroom. So we work and we value and we achieve and we try to empower our students to accomplish academic excellence as well. Some of the highlights of this current year's budget, the 17-18 ESS, was a big ticket item last year. As you folks know, we have 17 students that are in their home school and doing very well, that are participating in ESS, that are, we meet every other week, Laura, myself, and the ESS staff, and we discuss each student individually, strengths, weaknesses, what's happening with them in the program, how they're progressing, if they are progressing, if they're not, what else can we do? The social workers, the ESS staff also talk about some of the ways that the parents are contributing to that and some of the counseling that's going on as well. In this past budget is PSAT 9, 10, 11. We administered that in October as a school-wide testing day, and those data we use going forward. As you know, and the board should be thanked for this as well, for subsidizing portions of the AP exams. You folks do pay, subsidize half of that. Therefore, there's more offerings. We're starting to get up to speed with our counterparts in other districts. We were slow starting and behind the 8 ball, but we're starting to get there. We have more students taking that, and therefore we've also succeeded in that and have been recognized by College Board and are making the AP honor roll. Last year in this budget, and you'll see it again in this budget, was Chromebooks and Chromebooks carts, specifically in social studies, English, and special ed. They're a huge hit. It's now like having students have a pencil. I mean, quite frankly, if there was a bottomless pit of money, I'd be here asking for, a Chromebook for every student, because that's how much they're needed. But obviously, we do have a limited amount of resources, and that's not why I'm here or what I'm going to propose. But you will see Chromebooks asked for additionally in this year's budget. For example, we have 3 Chromebook carts in social studies. We have 16 teachers in social studies. So there is a need. Same thing with English. There's 3 carts. There's 15 teachers there. Curriculum writing, it's been talked about. Alicia mentioned it. We have various departments and courses that have been rewritten or revised and or created in new courses, and that's exciting. In textbooks, last year, this 17-18 budget, the board funded textbooks for statistics, pre-calculus, AP calculus books, AP human geography, the AP environmental science, and integrated science. So that was in the budget as well. The priorities for this budget obviously continue to maintain and improve instructional opportunities for our students. You're going to see some monies for textbooks. You're going to see monies for technology. You're going to see requests for a reading program and supplies, obviously, the day-to-day operations to run the school. We want to continue to address our social, emotional, and mental health needs of our students. We want to continue our partnership with the ADL, our NAMES program, bring on a new program we're bringing online this year in the spring for our 11th graders, titled Truth About Hate. And have more conversations about kind of diversity and tolerance and those types of things that I think are so very needed in this time. We also are continuing to fund college readiness and career opportunities. As I talked about last year's budget with the PSAT and AP, that too is in this year's budget. So on page 31, in art, you'll see on page 31 in art that there is there's a $1,500 increase, and moving that to $9,500. That is to take care of the consumable supplies in art in addition as normal, but also to address the new course in digital photography. And that was outlined in the course proposal a couple months back when you folks saw that. In English, you'll see that there again is a $900 item in purchase services, or tech services rather. Those are for the Chromebook licenses. As I mentioned, this year you'll see it minus $2,400 change because there's a difference of $2,400. You'll see an $8,400 line item, and that's for the Chromebooks, and that's on page 30. And you'll see that because last year we got a better rate thanks to Roberta and the networking that she does. We were able to get Chromebooks at a cheaper price than we paid for it in the 17-18 budget. You'll also see an increase in 57345 in instructional equipment. Last year in the 17-18 budget, there was document cameras put in there, and it was funded by the board. This year, there's 7 additional document cameras for our English department. All right, so if you're not familiar with a document camera, basically you have the ability to put a piece of student work underneath the document camera. It's projected onto a screen, and the teacher can edit and discuss through the paper right there and for the whole class to see. Again, embracing technology and how we teach and also how we learn in the classroom. You'll see a 23% increase in 558-100. That equates to $72. That's the National Council of English Teachers, memberships, and so forth, okay? I'd just like to point out the percentage increases, but I also think it's important to understand the dollar value of that too, okay? In health, you'll see that's also on page 30. At the bottom of the page, you'll see that there's $660 in there, and you'll also see $6,400. Those are for 22 Chromebooks and a license. The license for each Chromebook is $30. And then the Chromebook and cart equates to, for 22, equates out to $6,400. And that's for our health department, which would service 2 classes, and every 9th grader in New Milford High School takes health for a semester. So you can see how that is impacting our students. In math, on page 31, you'll see that there is a big ticket item there, put that up there, sorry, of $2,667. That basically is for a TI-84 calculator bundle. These are not cheap. There's a bundle of 30, and they're $122 each for calculators for some of our classes, and we use those as class sets and that type of thing. So that's what that number is for there. Moving along, in science, you'll see that, again, it's $62.95. Specifically, I'm on line 56410. All right, that's a big ticket item. It's going up from, last year was $32,500, this year it's $38,795. The reason for that is we're trying to purchase grade 10 biology books, 255 of them at $104 a throw, and also integrated science to make up to what we didn't order this year, 100 of them for $110. So textbooks, library books are needed, but they're very, very expensive. And you can see that, like I said, they're $104 and $110 respectively there. Social studies, page 31. Last year, we had a minimal increase, a minimal ask for textbooks. That was our AP Human Geography. This year, it's up to $32,000 or a $25,000 increase. That is for U.S. history books, 340 of them at $94. It's important to note to the board that the book that we're currently using is from 2000. All right, so a lot of things have happened in the United States in the last 18 years. I think it's important that we probably have a textbook that is at least as new, has been around since our students. So that book is older than some of our students that are there. Yes, yes. All right. You'll also see there too Chromebooks and the license there as well in that. In business, on page 32, you'll see a $2,500 increase there. That is for the increase to cover the cost of the newly adopted computer literacy course. That too was discussed at the full board in the course program when we had that conversation relative to that new course. $700 is an online service for practice AP. Pardon me. Yep.
In my notes, so you'll see that there's a printing error. That's a result of the Excel spreadsheet. We manually correct those. That one was missed. We'll fix that in the next version.
Okay. Also on page 32, in music, you'll see on line 55101, we've increased the transportation. I'm delighted to say that our choral program is growing, that they are out and about in the community, competing, performing. Quite frankly, I'd love to have the choral department perhaps maybe come sing a tune, and when the budget process is over, maybe Hallelujah might be after. But maybe we can do that. Maybe we can do that in February or something. I'd love to have them come and demonstrate their skills. They're wonderful, and our new teacher is doing a fabulous job with that. But that's $3,000 change is to cover the cost and transportation to ensure that they too get an opportunity to get out and about just as our band does. So you'll see that's why that's there. ELL, it's been talked about. Our ELL population is growing, so you'll see a change in line 56410 of $500. It looks like 100%, but it actually is $500. And the same with 100% in workbooks. That's a change of $100, and that's again to test prep materials and other books and things necessary to address our ELL population.
If I can just interrupt, this is where we discovered the photocopying error, so your packet no longer matches the
Right.
presentation.
Right.
Yes.
The last couple of pages did not
Have
fit in
been
your
omitted,
packet.
so I do apologize, they
you're
weren't
following on
copied, so,
paper.
but I'm still walking you through page by page on the budget as well.
Just make sure to mention the page.
Yes, indeed. Moving along to athletics, and that's on page 34, okay? You'll see a $7,000 increase in line 53,540. Basically, that's, cost of officials and police have gone up, all right? Their wages that they're getting to officiate games have gone up, so that needs to be reflective in our budget, and that's where the 7% increase is put there. You'll also know that you'll see something go down 57%, and we went from 7,000 to 3,000. That's repaired, that's where Mr. Lipinski used to buy a lot of the paint for lining the field, but by having 2 turf fields, we're able to reduce some of those monies as well. In 56,100, those are supplies, you'll see that go up 21.95% or $9,000. It's important to note that this line item got cut $15,000 last year, so we're trying to put $9,000 back to cover supplies necessary, uniforms, things of that nature for our athletic teams.
That was one of the lines in the June cuts.
Yes, in June we cut that, yeah. Student activities, you'll see in 55,320 on student activities, I'm on page 35. You'll see that that's an 83.33% increase, goes from 6,000 to 11,000. That's primarily to cover the Truth About Hate. This year it was covered in Alicia's budget. Next year, 18-19, is to continue our partnership with the ADL that's in this budget here. Okay. Guidance, you'll see 7825 or up 22%. That's to cover the costs of our PSATs and the subsidizing for the portion of the AP testing. So you'll see that increase there. And that's on page 36, pardon me if I didn't say that already. Special education, on page 36 as well, you'll see in 53,200, you'll see an increase of 185% or $26,000. That is for a reading program, all right? It's called Language Live Reading Program. Some of the things that we're identifying, again, Dr. Longo talked about running records, identifying student weaknesses in reading. Unfortunately, we don't have the programs to address this. This is where this is so very needed. It's both an online and teacher product to deliver additional reading services to our students that are below grade level. And we need to have something to address those students that currently we're lacking in that department.
Well, and some of that, and it's not a direct state mandate, this is kind of where you get to the indirect or consequences of some of the state law on dyslexia, where we need to have programs to address dyslexia in our schools. This program is one way we're choosing to do that. We could, there's lots of paths you can go down. This is one of them, and when we talked about, last night I talked about our out-of-district placement and kind of the risk we're taking there. Some of the way we're mitigating that risk is by trying to build programs in-house so that we don't have to send students out. We did that with ESS effectively. This program is one of the ways where we can have stronger dyslexia services at the high school and hopefully reduce the need to send students someplace else to get those services.
Correct.
So Mrs. Olson will talk about this a little more next week, but that $26,000 program, we believe, is going to offset a much greater cost of having to send a student to someplace else.
Exactly. And $1,500, that's general supplies. We have an increased population in special education, and supplies are necessary to meet the demands of those students as well. So I took you page by page, kind of some of the highlights of the increases percentage-wise, and I'm obviously happy to entertain any of the questions that you have.
Joe?
Before we go line by line, this won't fit on one-page question. How many Chromebooks are we purchasing in total?
That was my
Are we looking to purchase?
I can give you that number. Hold on.
that was my question.
Hold on one second. 130, 136,
136?
yes.
Thank you.
And they're in the departments of English, World Language, Health, Science, Social Studies, ELL, in our library, and and that's it.
What's the total dollar amount on that, please?
Chromebooks including carts, is $38,502. That is object 57340.
Throughout all the area, or,
For the entire
Right.
school.
Right, that's what I
correct.
meant.
So you're
Okay.
talking about $8,400 per cart, so it equates to $38,502.
your license is included,
The
correct?
license is not
No.
included in that, that's in 53,300,
900.
okay? And that is a total of, I have that for you as well. Should have it here, 50.
It's 900 a cart.
It's
so-
14,805.
I have one last question on the Chromebooks.
Oh,
Go ahead, Wendy.
It's just on the Chromebooks, and
Yeah.
these are part of a replacement, refreshment, what?
New,
Brand new?
Yep.
Okay,
additional new carts in service to meet the demands of the students and the teachers.
In addition to what we have.
and
Yeah.
that's my
Yes,
question.
absolutely. So as I said earlier, we have 15 teachers in social studies.
Right.
This would give us 4 carts. We have 15 teachers in English, this would give us 4 carts. We don't have a cart, this would give us 2 carts in world language of 8 teachers. This
Are
would
we
give us,
using any of these to replace the Chromebooks that we have now?
right now, knock wood, we're in really good shape, they're relatively new.
So this is some of it is a precautionary measure.
Right.
Is
Well, not.
that fair to say?
No, I would say it's, if they do come out of service, then we'll put them back, we'll have to, address and make sure there's 30 in the cart. But right now, they're not, right now, they're all in good working order, and we're trying to get more in service and into the classrooms to meet the
Increases
demands of the
student
students.
access. That's what this is.
Okay,
Yep, yep.
And they're also necessary for testing.
Oh,
So
yeah.
when world language moves to that test, they're going to need to have access to technology to provide it.
So how many carts now, and how many will this total be?
Okay, let's see, so like I said, in world language, in English, we have 3, this will give us 4. In world language, we have 1, this will give us 2. In health, we have none, it'll give us 1. In science, this will give us 1. In social studies, we have 3, this will give us 4. In ELL, there's not a cart, it's just 3 Chromebooks. In the library, it's not a cart, we're just adding 6 Chromebooks.
Okay, thank you.
Bill?
Yep.
Quick question.
Yeah.
When we supplement the fees for the AP,
Yep.
how do you figure out what to put in the budget?
That's,
Because the registration is in February, right?
well, that's why we're starting to move the registration. Now we did it, it's December 1st.
Okay.
All right, so we moved that back so we have a better idea of, for a couple reasons. 1, budgetary, and 2, we want the students to have skin in the game to ensure if they're taking the course that they're taking the test in May, so we know that that's happening. So I use those numbers to kind of project out what we're gonna be the following year.
Okay, so using
like-
this year's numbers.
So for
yeah,
example,
okay.
it's, this year, in 17-18, we had 554 tests. Right now, we're looking at about 657 tests gonna be administered in May,
Okay.
okay? So it's growing exponentially.
You don't put any extra in just in case?
No,
Okay.
So, I can answer, well,
you see where I'm going,
The
is that part of the
question
page 36?
yeah, so that line was cut last year, and in this year's budget, we transferred money into that line to cover for the PSAT 9.
That was one of my questions.
that's right.
That increase compensates for the cut that they took to that line and brings it back.
Okay.
There was a
Right.
transfer, I believe it was in September. We can go back and look at ops, but there's
Because
a
you're looking at
transfer.
$7,800, and so that certainly isn't the
It's not
dollar
the-
amount of, the test with 17 additional students. Do you
Right.
see how?
No, absolutely.
That's where I'm
the
going,
Yeah,
that's what my
yeah.
question was.
That covers.
See, we already answered page 36, David, there you
Well, we'll get another shot
go.
at
Yeah.
it.
So just for further clarification and address your question, so for grades 9, 10, 11, I have budget in there 11, of that number, of the 42,875, 11,000 of that is for grade 9, 10, 11. $30,875 is the number for the AP supplement. And that's based on 650 tests at $47.50,
How many tests did we take last year?
$554.
Thank you.
Okay, and 28. Any,
Going backwards, okay.
oh, you want to go backwards? 29? And 30. $31,
The other hand up, please.
Don't worry about it.
JT, thank you.
Thanks, Greg, for your presentation, and you always know where our eyes are gonna go, so.
Yeah.
We have that uncanny ability to really know exactly where we're gonna go. 'Cause I got a just question on the math, 57,345, the instructional equipment.
Yes.
You had mentioned for the TI-84 calculators?
Yes.
They're pricey, and I wonder too, have math people looked at the use of Desmos? I know SAT.
We're still using that, yep, we do use Desmos. This
Okay.
was just requested by our math teachers in our math department to get a bundle of the TI-84s, but we do use Desmos.
Okay,
yes.
do we still have inventory of the old 83s, or?
Yes, this is just in addition to, and obviously some, malfunction and break, but this is, it was presented to me as a necessity to have another class set of TI-84s.
Okay.
Yep.
So this would be almost like a cart or a roving?
Yes, absolutely. This would be, the way it's bundled, it is on a carrying case that a teacher can, all right, I'm doing a lesson in this particular, topic in which I could use these for a class set, and they would be, moved around within the department.
Okay. Thanks.
Yep.
Joe?
On the same topic, how many are we purchasing, or looking to purchase?
There's 30 of them.
And it's up to the individual math teacher to determine who gets to use them, because those of us with high school students have felt the pain of this calculator.
Well, yeah, but basically, in certain lessons, in certain classes, we want to make sure that everyone has it to complete the steps that need to be done for that particular unit.
So there are certain students, just given an economic situation, aren't capable of purchasing these, and that's who we're looking to address?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
and it's a class set.
This is a class, so if I was teaching a lesson
Right.
on the TI, I might be teaching how to use it. I'd bring in this caddy, and everybody would get one. This isn't to like lend them out to students to
They
take
say.
home.
Well, then, are you saying there's a group of students or a classroom that's not going to have to purchase these? Or a
No.
student's still going to have to purchase them, we're going to walk in with a group of
Some,
these?
some may.
Some will, some may not, but again, there might be, for some of the math that might be needed for, let's talk about maybe an SAT question, right? So a teacher might do a lesson on how to actually use the TI-84, particularly for this particular question. Or so they might be use them in their lab, in a class setting.
Where my loss is that every student is taking these more advanced, I don't know when it was, last year, 10th grade?
Yeah, 10th or 11th
We were,
grade.
every parent's told, that you have to go out and purchase one of these.
Right.
So if every parent's purchasing one,
Not every, we request that to make life easier on the student for homework purposes, things of that nature. I mean, if you're taking advanced math at the high school, a calculator is a necessity. But we're also cognizant of the fact that not every student can afford this. So, when we're in a classroom setting, that these are available for students as well.
For test taking and.
Yeah.
I'm still a little lost, but I'll let it go. We'll discuss it later. What I don't understand, if a teacher's walking in with 30 of them, you have to use those 30? Or if you've already purchased your own, you're on par with who's?
Right, you can use your own. We're not saying you have to use the one that we're providing, as long as it's the same one. For example, there's different, and I'm not, there are different nuances to each level of the calculator, but if they want to teach a lesson using this TI-84 and some of the functions that this particular unit uses and is able, graphing parabolas or whatever they might be doing, then they have the ability to do so.
Okay.
32? JT?
Let's see, second line on page 32 there. You had mentioned that was for practice for AP?
Yep,
So-
computer science. There's an online form that they can use, and it's $700 to use it.
So that's the AP Computer Science Principles course?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, I'm curious then, because I know there's practice that's coming up for other APs. There actually are a few courses right now that offer that.
Right.
So I'm curious, would that request be for other courses as well, or this is just for the computer science?
This is just for the computer science.
Okay.
Yep.
So just going back to our AP mantra,
Yeah.
we're trying to provide for all students.
Right.
If that exists in other places, have other departments requested?
As a matter of
practice?
fact, we're using a couple free services. Our AP Economics is piloting kind of a software that didn't come to the, you might see it next year.
Okay.
If they find some validity in it, but right now, they're just piloting some things, different stuff.
Okay.
Yep.
And is there a way to do this cost avoidant? I know Con is going to start to do some AP
Yep.
offerings as well. Is this something that would still have to be there if the $700 expense here, if Con picks that up?
I hope not. I think that's what we're all waiting to see, JT. I think that's a good question, how far is Con gonna get in the game?
Yeah.
They're talking a good game. Let's see if, they're gonna produce the practice services that they say they're going to provide. I don't know that to be
I
true
think
yet.
if they have the back end college board, they will.
Right, exactly. I hope so as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And 33, Tammy?
Mr. Shaboo, thank you so much. You've anticipated every single one of the questions that I had. However, when my packet ended, I got a little lost. So
Yes,
I was-
okay. Yeah.
So I was wondering if you could just please quickly go over the ELL portion, the 199.09% increase.
Sure, that's a difference of $500 is what
Yep.
it is. That's for additional test prep materials to handle our additional ELL population at the school.
Excellent. And the 20%?
And that's the same thing, that's an additional $100 for workbooks and so forth.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
And 34? Wendy?
The $7,000 additional for, in the athletic line.
Yep.
You had mentioned it was uniforms?
No, that one there, that $7,000 is to cover the additional cost of the officials and the police for
Okay.
coverage and to officiate the games.
So that's salary base,
Yes.
okay?
And basically, Mr. Lipinski gets informed by each athletic board of what their fees are for the coming year. And he has applied that to our current structure of games, home games, and equates that it's necessary to go back to the raise it from $100,000 to $107,000.
And on that same vein, that total line item of $760,000, that's our total athletic line?
Yeah, that includes the salaries. You'd have to take out, looks like you have to take out 117 plus 249. So you're talking operating number of about 383. That's what the operating number is, 383,000. The rest is salaries.
Right, but it's still, I understand.
Yep.
Yep, okay.
Joe?
In athletics there.
Yes, sir.
I can say generally, the fact that we're using less paint, saving the environment because of these incredible fields that we put in. Hats off to the town of New Milford for what I have just been told is national recognition for our fields and lighting.
Yep, it is.
National recognition. So it's one of the finer projects this town's ever pulled off,
Indeed.
and we're saving paint.
Should take that $4,000.
You should put it in the fund.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a whole other chapter.
That's another meeting.
Yes,
I believe that would be facilities.
And 35. And 36. Okay,
Ask the question, Judy.
I'm going to recess.
Don't recess yet, I got a question.
We found it, a lot of our questions are the same.
Okay,
thing.
well,
Go ahead.
Okay,
Go
we'll,
ahead.
we'll,
David.
Ask it.
Ask it.
We'll recess until Tuesday, January 23rd,
Excuse me.
2018.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Is it possible by Tuesday to find out what it would cost to increase assistant principal at HP and NES to one full-time?
That's a question that was already asked.
I asked
and-
that last time, but I want to
Yeah.
also get it for SNS to go to 3 administrators
Okay,
instead of.
The meeting is recessed. However, you are welcome to speak with the superintendent. Okay,
I thought we had public
recess.
comment at the end of the meeting,
Oh,
so we couldn't recess without public comment.
oh, you're right.
I know I'm right.
All right, so I'll ask for public comment. Now we're recessed.
Okay.